Ko Jin-hong was one of the best specialists who understood ancient writings. He had a 7-year-old son named Jae John. The boy came to the library every day, where his father worked and dealt with very old books. But the boy did not like his father's work at all. Because of his work, Mjin-ho was always busy, so the boy could not even dream of spending time with his father. And when they had the opportunity to spend time together, the father drank alcohol and told his son about his mother. Mjin-jon, in fact, liked it, although his father was alcohol. Mjin-hong was worried that the son was missing his mother, but the boy was quite okay, because he had a father. Many children in the neighborhood, such as Van Ho or Ho-chin, have lost their parents in the war. Came the next day. Someone knocks on the Gujin family very loudly. When the boy opened the gate, he saw Uncle Chon. The bearded man smiled gently and greeted. Jin-yeon told his uncle that he read the book and asked how the aunt was feeling. Uncle Chong thought he was better answered by a 7-year-old boy if he was asking such serious questions. But Jin-jeon reminds his uncle that people had been married at the age of 7. Yong scooed the little boy's hair and hugged him firmly that he was even difficult to breathe. The night has come. Men poured alcohol with each other. Uncle wants Mjin-hong to decipher the ancient scriptures on gold plates. In fact, there are no talented such as Jin-hong among all scientists. In addition, this is a great opportunity, because a highly respected man is interested in him. Jin-hong has not yet completed the research of the relic 6 for 10 years. But Uncle John insists and says that his friend has only 3 gold plates, so Hong will cope in a few days. The man was very proud, but he should also think about his son's future. Studying the subjects of the past is, of course, important. But Hagen Hong spent 10 years in vain. The man is already over and there is a bunch of debts that need to be paid. Uncle Chong again tells him to think about the future of Mjin-jona and for a while to forget about his relics. In the end, under such a pressure, Ju-in-hong agrees. The little boy was heard all their conversation. He seems to be very sorry for his father. Soon, his father is going to take this job, but he needs to leave home. He leaves Mjin-jona with a nanny. Jin-jon promises to listen to a nanny, and Dad may not worry about it. After that, they said goodbye, and Jin-hong went away. The evening has come. Jin-yeon sits on the stairs and thinks about something. Everyone is busy. Jin-jon sat and waited for his father, but thought that he would not come today. The upset boy sighs hard and returns home. Suddenly, his gaze clings to his father's office. Jin-jon became interesting, and he decided to go into him. Inside was very empty and dark. The boy was passionate about when he saw that there were so many books here. Soon, his view clings to the picture that hung on the wall. If Jin-yeon correctly remembers that this picture was a secret passage, these stairs, which were behind the painting, led to the father's repositories. Then, Jin-yeon decides to look at everything around, and hopes that his father would not be against it. He takes a candle and is about to go down. When Mjin-jon goes down, he sees a large room there which has a lot of interesting things. There were so many ancient objects, even from the event. Suddenly, our hero notices something very interesting, which immediately attracts his attention. Jin-jon sees the same box that his father has learned his entire life. The boy becomes very interesting what is inside, and he climbs inside the box. Here he sees a strange staff and books with ancient records. It is a little upset of him, because he thought it would be more interesting here. But when Jin-yeon fell a little in the box, he noticed a little more interesting. The boy found some strange small box. It was some octagon on which a spooky red muzzle was drawn. The boy even became a little alone from such a terrible cut. But when Mjin-jon was about to put this strange thing back in the box, you cut it strongly, and he had blood flowing. Immediately after that, the eyes of this strange box were shown with a bright emerald color. From the fact that our hero saw afterwards, a scream shouted out of his chest. It is not clear why, from this box began to come a bright emerald light. This bright light looked like tentacles, who rushed directly to the defenseless boy after a moment. And in a second, they struck him in his eyes, swallowing straight inside. Suddenly, this bright light detached Mjin-yeon from the floor. It was still in his eyes. A few seconds finally, it stopped. The strange light has completely entered his eyes. The boy did not understand what had happened, but felt severe, unbearable pain throughout the body. It took a while until our hero was unconscious. Finally, he slowly opens his eyes. Jin-jon looks at this box, trying to understand what happened to him. Without thinking long, the main character closed this box and decided that he had to go from here. As soon as the boy was going to go away, he heard some strange sounds and moans. From this, he was talking in place. After that, the boy became very scary at once, because he did not understand that it was for sounds. The sounds were so loud that it seemed as if the head would explode now. From this, the frightened boy crashed into the corner, trying to close his ears so that he could not hear that noise. Suddenly, Mzinjona seemed as if someone's big hands hugging his head. Because of this, he grabbed his wrist firmly, not understanding why he did it. It was the feeling that his hands were not listened to. A second. The palm was on his mouth. An unfamiliar voice ordered Jinjon to submit to him. The boy could barely breathe. Suddenly, something strange begins with the main character. More precisely, from his body. A moment, a bright aura began to go from our hero, forming a sphere. Ion immediately afterwards. Joni rushed to the stairs to leave this terrible and incomprehensible place. But the voice tried to stop Jinjona. He became louder and more horrifying with every word. The boy did not give up and shouted at this unfamiliar voice to go away. The protagonist tries to climb the stairs up the mountain, but darkness seems to pull it back. The body seemed incredibly heavy. The darkness was increasingly fascinating the boy, but he was not going to give up. Suddenly, a brilliant idea came to our hero. The smart boy realized that if he does not lose his mind, he would be able to win. So our hero really was able to leave this horrible room. The monster could not understand how that happened. This unknown creature thought she would immediately master the soul of this child, in which he has inserted. But for his great surprise, he could not. Jinyon finally came up with the stairs. Obviously his father did when he was sealing him, so you will need to find another way. Even if it takes a long time. It's been a while. The little boy was already lying in his crib and preparing for sleep. Suddenly, the boy is aware of something. Jinayon realized that he no longer heard those strange sounds and hopes that the monster has disappeared. But in a second, he heard this voice again, who asked what the boy's name was. From fear, the baby jumped out of bed. The whole body was shaking. Our hero was the one who woke up this unknown creature. But the protagonist does not want to answer the questions of this stranger at all. Suddenly, he sees big emerald eyes in the corner of the room. The boy covers incredible fear. He set in place. Muzinjan is still not going to tell these creatures as his name. But it seems that the monster is not going to retreat. Morning has come. Jin Ion was sitting on the stairs, but he did not have a mood at all. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him. It was a nanny. She noticed that Jin's Ion had a very pale face and thought that he had something hurt. The main character just looked at her silently but did not answer. In a second, he sighed heavily, taking his gaze. After that, he answered the woman that he had all well. He just needs to relax in order for everything to go. Then, the nanny told the boy that he would rest more today and read less. After that, the woman went on her business, leaving the boy himself. Jin Ion understood perfectly that if he told someone, he would not be taken seriously, and just say that he was hung. It's been a while, but our hero was still sitting on the stairs. Suddenly, darkness hangs over it. He heard the voice of this mysterious creature that called him. The darkness asked what it was for a place, because she noticed that the air was completely different. Darkness tried to get out of Jinjono for talking, asking if there were other spirits in this place. But he did not answer. Our hero was barely restraining. He asked this creature to silence, because the voice was severely painful. In a second, the boy could not stand. He jumped out of his seat and began to shout, calling the darkness of Cherutan. But there was no answer. Did the darkness disappear? But in a second, a spooky voice came again. Darkness was called Certain, a great Makaya warrior. But Jinjon is not going to call this weirdo named. For him, he will be called Cherutan. After a second, silence came. The dark seems to go away. It's been a while. Dinner came. The nanny prepared many delicious dishes. The protagonist kindly thanked her for the food, and she went away. Soon, Jinjon began to eat. As he ate, he thought where the darkness went, because it was no longer heard. Did she go away? But a second, the boy heard this spooky voice again, and even spat out food from unexpectedness. Certain asks how the boy learned about it, but Jinjon does not understand what he means. It turns out that the main character guessed the nickname of this creature, Cherutan. This nickname was usually called Makai, but Jin Eon replied that it was just a wrong pronunciation of his name. The boy becomes wondering what Makai is, so he asks this in creatures. Makai is between the heavenly world and the world of people. In fact, the human species was created by the latter. A zone for the conflict of two worlds was needed. At first, it should not appear. It turns out that Makai and the heavenly world have created the world of people to fight. The boy thought correctly, and Certain said that he was reasonably smart. But Jin Ion is not sure that he can trust the words of the Cherutian. The creature is indignant from this. Certain again repeats our hero that his name is not a Cherutan. However, Jinjon is indifferent to this, because darkness is also calling him by his name. Suddenly, Mzinjan just starts laughing, but Certain does not understand what caused him laughter. The boy realized that if you write Cherutan in Chinese hieroglyphics, this word will appear at least some sense. and the meaning of this word will be a crying singer. From this, the boy laughed even more. Suddenly, Mjinjan notices that Certain was silent and thinks he was offended. It turns out that the boy learned about the ability of darkness, and it surprised him very much. Cherutan can voice control of the opponents, causes them to cry and horror. Hearing about it, Jinyeon was much surprised, but thought it was some kind of beacon. The protagonist does not respond to it and is not going to answer. He goes to bed, so he says Cherutian to behave quietly. It's been a while. The room was already dark, and our hero slept sweetly in his crib. Certain thought this boy was very fun. He is resourceful and interesting, but then Certain is amazed at what shows mercy to a human child. Darkness is going to once assign the body of this boy to himself. In any way, he wants to return to Makai. It came tomorrow. The boy began to count on the sand. Demons usually live for about 5,000 years, and Cherutan is now 1,000. This means that by human standards he is now 10 years old, which means they are definitely friends. Suddenly someone called the main character. The voice was very joyful. It was a babysitter that shouted that his father had already returned. Finally, his father returned to his home. The boy was very glad to see him. Mjin Hong immediately asked if there was nothing special at home until he was absent. If Mjin John tells his father about Cherutean, then he learns that his son secretly climbed in his repository. Therefore, the protagonist decides that it will be better to lie. My father is glad to hear that everything was well in his absence. Han had an urgent business, so he had to hurry. The father went away, and Cherutan asked why his father was not kind with his own son. Mjin Hong immediately goes to his library and approaches the picture. There was no time at all. He goes down and goes to his repository. The man approaches some things and looks carefully. After working on the stoves in the estate, the emperor will kill Jin Han. So before that, the man wants to record everything he knows. Meanwhile, in the estate, the news has already come to the emperor that Jin Hong had already returned home. The man said that he needed materials. The subordinate asks the emperor not to worry so, because it has not passed even 10 days after Zhu Jin Hong began his study. Many scientists have abandoned this during this time, so he still has not revealed the content. The emperor commands that as soon as Mjin Hong returns back and finishes everything, kill him, his family, and all who are connected with him. Jin Hong tied the bag, collecting his things, but before going, the man remembered something. The father warns that this time, he may devote 1 month to research. It is said that the lack of news is good news, so even if there is no news, you should not worry. Before leaving, the man tells his son to listen to the nanny. After that, Mjin Hong goes away without even turning to his son. When Mjin Hong came out of the yard, he saw some strangers near the fence. A stranger called a man by name. This stranger introduced himself as Yukdu Gam. They came here to accompany him. Jin John was not alone, because he did not understand why government troops were accompanying his father personally. Before he finally go, Mjin Hong tells his son so that he is responsible for studying. He gave Jin Jono for 9 books on Han a year ago, so the son, most likely, had already read them. Now he orders his son to repeat the 3rd volume. The boy was very surprised when he heard such a request from his father. Mjin Hong says he will take the exam when he returns. After that, they went to the estate. Hagen John does not understand what his father meant, because he graduated from Hanshi 2 years ago. Then why read the 3rd volume again? So it took a while. The day was very rainy. Our hero sat again on the stairs. It has passed the whole month after the father has left, and there is still no news from him. It's time to go home because it was too heavy. Suddenly, the boy noticed something aside. He notices that the warriors were still near their home. But why so? It was quite strange, but the main character did not pay attention to it and went home. There was a voice of Cherutian, who asked our hero what happened because he looked embarrassed. Jin Ion told his experiences that those warriors still stand around their home. Certain thinks that these soldiers came when his father came, because he has been feeling their energy for a long time. Certain did not tell the boy, because he did not consider it strange. The boy realized that he should read the 3rd volume urgently, as his father said. Jinjon thinks that his father may have left a hint or sign for him. The boy found Hansh, but did not see the 3rd volume here. The protagonist begins to look for a 3rd volume, but he cannot find him. Did he miscalculate something? Cherutan watched our hero and intervened, saying that there was another place in which he did not look for. Jinjon took a candle and decided to go to the repository to look there. When a boy thinks that he was here to the Cherutan, he does not get on his own. Jinjon is calling a war root with him, and they go down to look there. Soon, he goes to a completely dark room, illuminating his path with a candle. Finally, he saw the same 3rd volume on the table. It turns out that the 3rd volume was on the table all this time. Darkness turns to the boy and asks that the inscriptions are on the table. The protagonist looks closely at these inscriptions, but cannot understand what is written here. Then, Jin John is about to look at the answer in the third volume. The boy does not understand why his father wrote it on the addressed page. In addition, the records were written in advance. The order was violated. Right and left hieroglyph changed in places. If you read the words, mother, animal, force, 3 times, it seems that our hero has understood the connection of these words. Certain also wanted to hear how the boy learned about it, but Jinjoni promised to tell it later. Among those sculptures of animals which was passed by a boy, a mother who gave birth by the sea was very fond of turtles. By the way, the main hand of our hero is the left, and only they know about it with their father. The task was that the boy turned this sculpture of the turtle on the left 3 times. The protagonist tries to return this sculpture, and makes a lot of effort. Certain did not understand what this child was doing, but he became scared from that. As soon as he managed to return the sculpture, the cabinet with the books moved, and the secret passage opened. Jinjon shocked when he realized that there was still a secret room below. There were records of his father and all the documents. It is written here that it was a mistake to come to the imperial estate. They think that Mjin Hon takes a long time to decipher gold plates, but in fact the man already solved them. But to convey to the emperor the content of these gold plates was very dangerous. The boy did not understand what the runes were. Certain explained that magical formulas are called runes. Magic uses Manu to change air and nature. Thanks to magic you can even fly on a broom. You can even turn into a rat, or use the spirits of nature as subordinates. The boy asks to teach him at least a little magic if he knows. Meanwhile, Uncle John quickly rode on a horse to Jinjona. He had to hurry to save the boy. According to the text, except the cities where they live, there are many others. The person who wrote about it came from another world. It was Mag Jenna. He always tried to return to his world. But heaven envied his abilities, so the sorcerer could not return and ended his life in this world. But he thought all his life that it was because of the damn item he accidentally received. This item had a powerful force that was enough to change Jen's magic he created to return. It was a demonic thing. The father wrote that when the son inherits him, he should always handle such things very carefully. It was all written in his records. But it was too late. The boy has already touched such a subject. In any case, he learned that there was a sorcerer who came from another world here, but could not return because of a demonic object. Then, the protagonist remembers the runes he saw on the wall. He remembered how Cheriton said that he had suffered human language from the boy's head last time. Darkness does not understand why it is a boy, but our hero asks to move his runes in his head. Now they are 2 compatible minds, so they need to know it together. Then the protagonist decides to challenge the darkness and tease him, saying that he probably just can't do it. It really affects the certain, and he decides to prove his abilities. After a second, bright light begins to go from the boy's eyes. His head will hurt as if it were about to explode. Jinjon did not expect it. The pain was very strong and unbearable, so a cry broke out of the chest. A few seconds, it stopped. The boy had a lot of head. Certain says it takes a while to fully understand runes, but in a second, our hero was able to read what was written in the documents. It is really surprising, because now it seems that this boy is unusual if he was able to read it so quickly. Jin Ion remembered all the words that were on the wall. Now it's time to move to another step. It seems to our hero a little scary. After a while, he finished reading documents. After that, he asked the darkness to teach him a little magic. Charutan says it is simply impossible because Makai is prohibited by law. But the protagonist does not see the problem that the darkness teaches basic magic. Moreover, they are not in Makai now. Soon, Cheritan agrees, and the boy thanks him much. But Darkness warns that he is very badly familiar with human magic. Because of this, Mijinjon was greatly disappointed because he thought to learn magic. Then Cheritan says he will teach the boys magic used in Makai. This magic is called Fantasy Finger, the magic that control the finger. This force should be different than people. If the guy has a lot of magic, then he can do incredible things, such as cutting space. But it was necessary to bypass this spell. Because if it is wrong, not only mana but also vital energy will go from the tip of the finger, so you can even die. That is why this spell can only be used once a day. Suddenly the boy hears him call him. This voice was very familiar, and Jin Yeon almost immediately guessed that he was Uncle Chan. So he quickly ran away to climb up. The protagonist quickly ran down the stairs to the mountain, hearing his uncle continues to call him. Uncle Chong seems to be very nervous and outraged. Finally, the room came to the room, who excitedly asked his uncle what had happened. Uncle John quickly told that there was a real trouble, and our hero's father was arrested in the imperial estate. The uncle himself does not know what it means, but Jin Hong decrypted the content of the plates, so the emperor is very angry. In any case, it meant that staying at home could not be run as soon as possible. The boy is very scared, because all these news came to him very unexpectedly. There is a law that if you offend the emperor's family, all relatives of the perpetrator will be killed. Therefore, warriors can come here in order to catch a Hungan Ion, so we need to run faster. They quickly rushed to the back door to escape, but it was too late. The spear knocked the door and touched his uncle. The man wounded his hand and blood flowed. Uncle Chong reassures them, and says that nothing serious has happened. He was just scratching his shoulder. There were already imperial warriors on the threshold, who said that no one would be able to leave this house. The boy sees that his uncle is very bad because his hand hurts. Then, the protagonist is summed up and directs the index finger to his enemies. With tears in his eyes, he is about to use the same magic he learned from the darkness. Fantasy finger. But suddenly the uncle stands in front of Jin, closing the boy with his back. He seems to be and says he is a candidate for the cabinet of ministers, and now they have injured him. The man threatens the soldiers and says they will be severely punished for it. Hearing this, the warriors immediately begin to be nervous because they did not want to injure such a respectable person. Their head is coming to see if the man's hand is wounded. Uncle Chong says he came here because it is his friend's house. Can't come here? That is why he tells the soldiers to go away, but they answer they cannot. The head of the guard executes the order of the imperial family, so he cannot retreat. Uncle John assures that there is no one here except the babysitter and a young child, but it turns out that he was ordered to arrest his son Haigen Han. But his uncle thinks that this is a mistake, because this boy is barely 8 years old. Uncle begins to defend the boy. Are they going to punish a young child? But the warrior is absolutely indifferent. He says that the order of the imperial family should fulfill, and if a man interfere with this process, they will have to pick up it. Our hero interferes with their conversation and tell them not to worry, because he obeyfully goes to follow them. The protagonist asks his uncle not to worry, because he is sure that people from the government will do nothing wrong with him. But Jinjon wants to know what the reason is taken away, and he wants to see his father. The head of the guard says that his father was rolled up in prison under his supervision, and the man allows the boy to see with his father only once. Uncle Chong is very worried about our hero and warns that it is very dangerous. Although Majin is small, but you should not forget that he is the first son of this house. Moreover, my father would not want the son to run away. You should not worry, because nothing wrong will happen. The head of the guard says that the guilt of the thief has not yet been proven, so you need to wait a little. It's better than all your life to hide and run away. Immediately afterwards, the soldiers take with them a little boy go to the imperial estate. The evening has already come, a warm, gentle evening. Jin Jonah was brought to Jinivei prison. Half of those who come here no longer go back, but even if someone can survive, they lose their mind. This place is known as a real hell. Finally, they came to the desired prison. The father of our hero was inside. As soon as the boy saw his father, he immediately rushed to him. The exhausted Hunhan was chained to the wall. He was unconscious because of fatigue. When a man opened and into his eyes, he was shocked to see in this horrible place of his son. Jinjon wanted to approach his father closer, but the head of the guard said that the offender could not be approached so close. Majin Hong did not understand why his son was here, because it was definitely not his place. The protagonist was bitterly crying because he was told that his father was a real criminal. The man addressed the warrior and asked why they had sharpened his son here, if he was absolutely nothing, but the head of the guard said they were given such an order. As everyone knows, if you offend the imperial family, all relatives of the perpetrator will be killed. Majin Hong was crying hard, begging at least his son, even if he was a criminal. But the warrior is not going to listen to them and says he will come back here later. After that, the warrior picks up a little boy and leads from here. Majin Hong remains completely in the chamber alone. The voice is getting quieter, but he still begs for his son to spare. Suddenly, a man heard a voice who asked if he would obey him and do all the work if he pushes his son. It turns out that all this time in the shadow of the room was an emperor who listened and watched him. Majin Hong begs not to touch him, at least his son. If a man wants this, then he must listen to all the orders of the emperor. If Majin Hong promised not to deceive and how to conduct the experiment, then he will not kill his son. Jinjon was only an insurance that the man did not deceive the emperor again. But before the study is completed, the emperor is about to send the boy to exile. After a while, the ship floats to the island, which has mountains and a lot of vegetation. This is an isolated island in the province of Shandong. It is said that the prisoner who got there is very difficult to escape. Prisoners who looked threatening and very creepy on the island of the newcomer. Although imperial warriors say that prisoners are very kind and cute, but Mijin Ion sees that it is not true. The head of the guard is not satisfied with the fact that they have sent a child to exile, Everyone thinks the boy is too small to send him prisoners as a toy. After a second, the head orders to send the boy to one room with an old man. Meanwhile, on the island, the warriors lead our hero to his room. This place was in a dark and spooky cave. Declaration is believed that the child is very obedient, so it will be possible to have fun with him. Soon, Mjin Ion is brought to the square in front of all other prisoners. The man screams loudly to keep all the prisoners silenced and listen to him. He raises the main character with one hand and represents a new one. This boy is called Kojin Ion. He is only 8 years old. He is still very young, so he will do small tasks until he is 10 years old. Men in their heads definitely have some terrible thoughts about Jaejin Jonah, and they look at him like prey. If the main character will cry and be afraid of them, then this bearded thief is about to undress him completely. Cheritan concludes that there is no adequate person on this island, and that hairy man is especially unpleasant. The prisoners look at the boy with their predatory views. It's been a while. The main character lay on the floor of the prison. Soon he stood up and wiped his eyes. Jinjon mentioned that he had lost consciousness as soon as he entered the prison. The boy does not know what to do in this situation, so I plan to suffer for a few days and think. Suddenly someone screams very loudly, which is what the boy is falling from. All prisoners got into the line at lunch. The same bearded man approached our hero and put his hand on his shoulder. The beard is advised to eat the little one because if he does not, it will be bad. All prisoners were decided on a little boy. The beard began to shout at them and said it was the first and last indulgence for the new one. Hizenjon reassures the man and says everything is fine, but the beard does it not because of mercy, so the boy is better silent. Soon the main character also receives his portion of food. But when he looks at the plate, it only causes him immediately. The bearded man approaches him and moves away, because if he took his portion, you should go away. It becomes clear in the boy's face that he does not want to eat. The man says that if Hizenjon does not want to eat, it is important not to throw it away, but to give someone else. Many do not even get what a boy has received today. The beard was well aware that if the child was sent to this island, it means that his family did some harm to the imperial family. The prisoner asking if our hero had once liked this food? Of course, the young man never tried something like that. Although their family was not much rich, he never ate something like that. The boy looks at this plate with sadness. The words of this beard were killed right on his heart. It was clearly visible that Jin Eon was not very pleased with this, but in a second, he collected all his fist and said he could eat it. The main character is about to endure until he gets out. He will eat anything to survive. In a second, he takes a spoon to his mouth. Mjin was literally crushed with this food but continued to eat. And from today, the boy began to give a lot of tasks. If he did badly, he could even get on his head. From such physical exertion, the hands were all in scratches and blood. Therefore, at the first opportunity, Mjin Eon tried to go to bed. But at night he was engaged in studying magic. It was necessary to gather all energy between the palms to form spheres. Very soon our hero will be able to master magic and destroy this horrible place. In order to collect Manu, natural energy must be strong. But the energy of this island is not suitable for this. That is why darkness wants to solve this problem. Morning came. The sun was gradually going to the room. Suddenly, the protagonist felt someone's hands who touched him. Jinjon was very sleepy, so he didn't even immediately realize who had him. But only then he realized that behind his back was some old bearded man who touched him with his own hands. It was Gu Jan's old man, but Jinjon did not understand what he was doing. From unexpectedness, the protagonist pulled away from him and gave a questionnaire. But even so, my grandfather still continued to massage the boy. From the actions of Gon, all the difficulty and everything after work as if his hand removed. It turns out that darkness knew everything about it. But she didn't say anything to our hero. Sertan did not talk about it because he thought it would be very useful for Mjin Jonah. And with his character, it is obvious that he would refuse to make his grandfather a massage all night. My grandfather asked how the boy was feeling, and our hero sincerely thanked him for the massage. Jin Yon was a little tired, but in general, everything was fine. The boy thought it was difficult. The grandfather is interested in the guy how he got into this place. Then Jinjon says that he got into exile. The grandfather is surprised, because if you offend the imperial family, then the perpetrator and his family are killed. But the boy was sent to the island. Guyang concludes that the situation was ambiguous. Gujan all this time overseeing Jin Jono and concluding that he was a truly incredible child. But his grandfather also noticed that a strange energy was taking place in his body, and he asked if the boy had once been studying the martial arts. The protagonist thinks that under strange energy, he is referring to Hultan's seal. Our hero understands that it will be very difficult to tell the whole truth about the certain. Hygen Joni has calmly answered that I have never studied the martial arts. The only thing he knows is the breathing technique that his father taught him. My grandfather did not immediately understand what technique he was talking about, but thought he was in mind his belly. It was so. But it is not something like martial arts, but simply purification of mind and body. Gu Yang thought about it, but still said that the boy did not overdo it. Now Grandpa is going to use our hero as an assistant. Since Mumjin's body is weak, he will not last a year, so we need to train. John. Thanks for this. But he is still not sure that the soldiers will allow it. Gu Yang takes all the responsibility for it, so the boy may not worry. The grandfather says that he has nothing to thank the boy, because he does it only for his own benefit. Came the next day. In the morning, everyone was busy with work. Grandpa gives our hero a new task: bring the tool from the warehouse. It is amazing, but after the boy has become a subordinate to the old man, none of the prisoners touches them anymore. This meant that the influence of the grandfather here is very serious. Suddenly, a familiar voice was heard from his back. It was a beard. It was Uncle Hay. He noticed that Jono's Jonah has been going well lately. He has already come to him that the boy became a subordinate to Yan. It seems that the man was glad for him. But if Jinjon did not become his grandfather, Uncle Sin would have appropriated him. Sin advises to prove well in front of Guana. The beard warned the boy that Gu Yang was a terrible man. Jin Yeon wanted to learn more about his grandfather, so he asked the beard directly. He began to tell the story. When a new daughter arrives, I always warn him. If he wants to leave this place as soon as possible, the position of daughter is high, but the status is reduced if it occupies it in Cheonggundan. The reason why everyone wants to please the old man is his sculpture skills. The sculptures he cuts go straight to the estate. But there was one man who tried to suppress Gayan by force. But the old man did not obey and did not work in protest for 10 days. And 3 sculptures were not enough in the imperial estate. After that, Daij received a letter about what remains in Cheonggundan for another 3 years. The man was severely angry and ordered to seize the old man urgently. The angry daughter sent a soldier to Guyan's camera, but after a while, they all lying on the floor, and Gu Yang stood over them. The soldiers were shocked when they saw such a picture. They immediately decided to attack him and began to wave their spears, but Gu Yang was skillfully evaded. It feels like he was walking in the wind. With a light movement, he struck one of the soldiers who immediately cried away from pain. The blow was so strong that the unhappy flew a few meters ago. The soldier flew straight into the rock behind and left a strong dent there. The attendees who saw this were called on the spot, but it was too late. The old man, like lightning, quickly found himself behind their backs. Gujan took a spear from the land that once belonged to one of the soldiers. After that, he went to other warriors who were in fear. They called in place of horror. If they want to catch Guana, then they will need to send all the soldiers on this island and lose at least half. The arrogant and self-righteous man was shocked that his grandfather dared to threaten him. In a second, Gu Yang threw his spear, but did not specifically drop it right in front of his legs. From fear, the daughter fell to the ground and obeyed. Gu Yang hung over him like a rock and asked, "He will choose to be imprisoned or get up?" This story ended in the fact that the daughter was bowing his head and begging for forgiveness, and only so was so able to reassure the anger of Gan. 3 years later, the daughter was able to leave the island. And after this story, no one contacted him, unless the old Jan's old man wants to leave the stone mountain himself. So the months went, and the golden autumn came. The protagonist still continued to help Guhan, but he was very worried about his father. My grandfather somehow noticed that Jijinjan is worried about his father. The boy's face is full of experiences. The boy does not hide this, and confesses that he is really worried. It has been a lot of time since their last meeting, and Jinjon thinks that his father is still suffering, and the son is very far from him and cannot even help. The old man sees that the thoughts of his father are very wounded by the boy and do hurt. But if Mijin's thoughts are so, the distance between him and his father will only increase. Gujan advised Jinjon to forget about his father until he could care for himself. Otherwise, our hero's soul will burn the first. The protagonist decided to listen to Guyan's advice and temporarily forget about his father. But the young man was not sure that he could do it. It seems too heavy. But darkness says that meeting with a father will not make sense if he breaks before. Now it is important to do as the old man advised, because it will still be temporary. Jinjon wants to think positively, so he agrees with these words. The protagonist also noticed that the soldier was not visible. He came here to change his grandfather's hammer. It was very difficult because Haigen-jan could not take it from here. Suddenly, Sertan notices someone's trace and invites the boy to look at them. Suddenly, the protagonist hears someone calls him. It was Uncle Hay and some other man. They asked the boy to come for a minute. Our hero looked at them with distrust, but they asked again to come closer. But Mijin Jon replies that he is very busy, and he is already going to go. Uncle Sin was angry with the boy because he thought he was treating him only because old Guhu-Jan was looking after him. But the protagonist never showed disrespect for the man. Suddenly the beard detaches Minjin-jona from the ground and says that it is better not to move. Jin-Ion asks to let him go, but Uncle Sin seems to be not going to do it. Another prisoner said to remove the pants from the boy, so they will be able to get a bottle of alcohol. Minjin-jan is difficult to believe that a man does it all for the sake of a bottle of alcohol. The boy understands that he cannot resist at all, because it is much weaker. However, he recalls that it is not necessary to use only physical force. Then, the protagonist decides to use his magical abilities. Cheriton warns our hero that it can be very dangerous for him. Then, he asks the refuge to let him know when the boy accumulates enough energy to use magic. Jin-Ion warns Uncle Hay that if he does not let him go right now, he will regret it. But the man laughs at him, so our hero continues to accumulate mana. And after a second, Heejin-jan sends all his magic to the one who dared to offend him. Uncle Hay screams loudly from the unbearable burning pain that has covered his whole body. After a moment, it falls on the floor and beats in agony, grabbing the heart. Immediately after, another prisoner runs to his friend, not knowing how to do it. Meanwhile, the main character is still shocked from what he had just done. From his hands comes steam and smoke. The night has come. Guyang turns to the boy and asks if he is very difficult for him. But our hero quickly pulls a smile on his face and says he can tolerate it. Then, the gray man thinks and scratches his beard. It turns out that Guan for our hero has some proposal. My grandfather invites him to start studying martial arts. Jin-jan is amazed at such a proposal, because he does not understand who can become his teacher. In a second, the grandfather offers his candidacy, and says he can teach the boy. Jin-jan was a little surprised when he heard that his grandfather was going to teach him. Does he know the martial arts? It was obvious, because it was rumored that Gu Yang had beat more than a dozen soldiers, so probably the old Murim master is probably already old. But Gu Yang said that the boy should not consider him his mentor. Gu Yang is going to just teach him for his own motives. The protagonist assumes that his grandfather wants to teach him the martial arts because he is worried about him. This proposal is very attractive, but Jin Yeon does not understand why Guhan is doing so much for him. Our hero does not think that it is a common manifestation of kindness for the child. But in a second, my grandfather says that in exchange for his studies, the boy should do one thing for him. But my grandfather immediately warns that it will be a difficult thing. First, it will be very difficult to get out of this island. It was true. There is a lot of effort to escape from Cheongundon. And if our hero wants to learn the martial arts, then Gu Yang will be able to teach him the basics. However, my grandfather says Jijin-jan not to answer right now, but think. This is not something that can be done easily and simply. The grandfather gives the boy for thinking for 5 years, for which he has to make a decision. The protagonist was shocked when he heard such a large figure. For 5 years. Gu Yang says that through this period, the mind and body of our hero ripen, and then the boy will be able to make the right decision. In addition, it is impossible to learn the technicians of Gan with the body of Hizun-joni, which he has now. The old man thinks that even 5 years will not be enough for it. Jin Yeon is well aware that if he learns martial arts, it will be much easier to survive here. Even saving your father will be easier, so Haigen-jan promises to follow the words of his grandfather. It's been a while. The main character sits on a stone and thinks about everything. There are a lot of thoughts in the young boy now. Suddenly the young man notices his Uncle Hay and calls him. It seems that after recently the beard is a little afraid of the boy. When Jin-jan began to approach the man, he pulled a little from fear. The protagonist kindly asks whether the man's body has recovered after a recent one. Uncle Sin even stutters a little, and his voice trembles. But he says that everything is well with him. He says that for such a chunky man as he was a trifle. Jin-Ion smiles kindly and says it's very glad that everything is well with her husband. Uncle Sin began to Anita something under his nose. He says he had an important thing that he almost forgot. Immediately afterwards, the man runs away. He came up with this to get away from our hero faster. The boy noticed that his uncle behaved very strange, as if he saw a ghost or something like that. Cherutan says it was quite obvious, because yesterday the boy beat him very much, and now Uncle Sin is afraid of him. Darkness mocks the man puddle and says that now he has become calmer. If Cherutan could go back during time, then he would have burned this hairy chunky man. He annoys him greatly. Although it looked quite stupid, our hero was glad that he had a good use of magic. Now the young man can protect himself, and will definitely not suffer from the bullying of that beard. Suddenly, the old man is approached by an old man who asks whether he is already prepared. The protagonist smiles warmly and says that everything is ready. Immediately after, my grandfather gives our hero a hammer. Gu Yang says that from today the boy will also be engaged in breaking stones. The task of the main character to do the same as his grandfather always did. You just have to break the stones. Jinjon is very surprised because he does not understand how it applies to the martial arts. But Guyang says it really has to do with the martial arts. He is about to teach Mijinjon a Chenden technique. Once upon a time, the old man was part of one organization that was located in the Tantian spiritual temple. And this technique that he wants to teach our hero is very useful for laying the foundation. It is great for creating a QU stream, as well as very effective in terms of physical training. With these words, Guyang disrupts a stone with one hand. Stone crushing is a preparatory stage for this, but it is important not to rush in this case. Breathing and strokes of a hammer on stone should be in one rhythm. After a second, the old man decides to start occupying and orders the protagonist to begin. The weather on the street was wonderful. There was quite quiet between the rocks. From the day his grandfather decided to teach Mijinjono for martial arts, he broke the stones in the afternoon and rescued the respiratory balance. The protagonist worked hard, though sometimes he fell on his fingers. And at night, instead of sleeping, our hero hung on a stone wall. He did this to make hands and fingers stronger. Even just hanging on the wall was incredibly painful. But the boy continued to do it through tears. Although it was painful, it was much easier, thanks to the technique of control of internal energy and the power of fantasy finger. So it passed the whole year. Mijinjon became much stronger and could now pull up, holding only one hand. The boy became much more agile and skillful than he was before. He easily jumped off the rock. He was approached by his grandfather, who asked if he had already finished his workout. Jinjon happily replied that the workout had come to an end. Guyang carefully studies our hero with his eyes and thinks if his body is already developed. There should be no problems with the next stage. It was really unexpected. Jinjon the questionnaire looked at his grandfather. He noticed that the old man was looking at him too carefully. The protagonist thought that something was wrong, but the old man assured him that he just thought. Grandpa thinks that the boy is tired after the workout, so he tells him to go and relax. Jinjon is bowing and thanks him for his workout. After that, he turns and goes away. Guyang looks him in the trail and thinks. The old man thought he would not be enough, but it turned out to be wrong. It will not take 10 years, as Guyang will teach him everything he knows himself. I wonder if the same feeling arises from a mentor who has a wonderful student. But after a second, Gu Huyang rejects these thoughts from himself. Because in this way, he slows down his development. The old man does it all to fulfill the cherished desire. Jinjono is definitely under the power. Meanwhile, Jinjon trains instead of rest. He accumulated energy, as if lightning swept past the stone and cut them off. Cherutan says that the boy's fingers are gradually getting used to such, and magical power is as rapidly growing. Now it will be possible to go beyond the second sort, and go to the third. Hygen no matter how much he tries, but he cannot remember the word sort. Then, the protagonist decides to simplify this word for himself and call it a common circle. At this stage, Jinjon proposes to change the names of others to make them easier to understand. Light will be called the magic of light, and fly will be the magic of flight. The protagonist looks at Cherutan and asks whether he liked that idea. Cherutan does not like it because it sounds too primitive. However, Jinyon is about to do in his own way. Now he wants to train internal energy. After that, the protagonist begins to choose which boulder is best for this. Soon the boy found the right one, which is suitable for his workout. After that, he climbed on him and sat in a lotus pose, leveling his breath. The protagonist was fully focused on his breathing and internal energy. A few seconds, a light blue glow began to go from the boy, lifting his black hair. This bright glow seemed to let the roots and branches that stretched to the same chest from which it all began. But suddenly something has changed. A darkness appeared around our hero. Jinjon was very frightened by this, because he did not understand what was happening. But the young man was quickly able to take his hands and realized that he had to stop Chi first. When the boy did it, there was a strong dust and dirt around him and the boulder on which he was sitting. Cherutan noticed that our hero behaved somehow strange and asked what had happened to him. It turns out that a lot of energy appeared in the body of the main character. Maybe Kreesin knows what it is? In the dark, she explained that the power of magical stone and the energy of the seal are mixed together. It turns out that Jinjon did not know about it at all. Cherutan I tell that this energy has been mixed with each other for a long time. Hygen was outraged because Cherutan did not tell him about it before. But the darkness just thought it was so obvious. In this case, the speed of development increased so quickly through the magic stone. Now our hero has become clear why he was growing faster, despite the fucking energy of this island. It turns out that the magical stone and the energy of the seal simply replaced the energy that it lacked. Cherutan says that when they first arrived at this island, He thought that the fourth circle would be the boundary of our hero. But now perhaps the boy will be able to develop much more. Jin Ion is very pleased with these words. He is going to see how far he can go. The evening came. Our hero is busy that he mediates and controls his internal energy. Just over 2 years have passed, but Jinjona's ability corresponds to 30 years of practice. Guyang thinks, should he teach this child last Tanatan? From the very beginning, he did not have to enter the outside world. In particular, the last volume had to keep a secret, but Guyang fluctuates and thinks that he should convey knowledge of him at least. In addition, it will be sad not to teach a child with such unsurpassed abilities. After a while, the boy approaches his grandfather and asks if he has been waiting for a long time. Gujan praises Mijinjona and marks that his internal energy is growing like yeast. The main character thank you my grandfather, because it is all thanks to him and his workout. After a second, Grandpa says he is about to pass the last volume of Tian Tan to the boy. We can say that it is the main one. This is one of the 3 great martial arts. Thanks to this, Mijinjon will be able to splash the inner force of freedom, moving it at will. In simple words, it is QU control. In the future, Gujan is about to teach Mijinjona. Our hero is glad and promises that he will definitely learn it. The evening has come. Jin-eon sits on a stone and draws something with a stick on the ground. Suddenly, Chirutan turns to him and asks what happened because the boy looks quite sad. On Earth, Jin-eon derives the ancient writings that his father studied at the request of the imperial estate. It turns out that the boy was a bit able to understand the meaning of these words. One of them means spell, but not simple, but a spell of martial art. The exact name in that world is unknown. But if you translate into human language, it will be absorption of energy of heaven and earth, control of the soul, absorption of the strength of heaven and earth, magic of managing the soul. The second plate emphasizes that the obtained magical power can be released. It is important to use this great demonic ability correctly. The main character does not care at all his power and anger. Most of all, he is worried about the fact that people who want to learn this magic do not allow him to go to his father. Recalling this, Jin-eon began to miss again. Then, Cherutan invites the boy to study this martial art himself. There may be no one else on Earth. But our hero does not have such a desire because he thinks that he can become a demon. However, Cherutan thinks that if Haizunjono has this magic, he will be able to properly understand the power of stones and magic of the seal. In addition, our hero's strength is not enough to collect energy to release this magic. But if the young man learns this, it seems to be able to use a lightning strike. Hearing about it, Jinjon was very interested in, but Cherutan immediately realized that he said unnecessary. In any case, with the current abilities of the boy will not work. His heart will just burn and he can die. Jinjon sighs hard, realizing that Cherutan is right. But the protagonist does not seem and says he should improve his abilities. He asks to wait for another 3 years. In the evening, our hero is busy that he knocks out the stones and makes a sculpture. Guyang, meanwhile, begins a conversation about the technique of heaven and earth. Sertan divided the spell into 3 parts. The technique of heaven and earth, energy absorption, and soul control. Jin-eon thinks that it is better to hide some of the absorption of energy and control of the soul. Therefore, the boy understands what to talk about the magic of martial art is not the best solution. It will be better to hide it. Although Zinjon did not tell him so much about it, his grandfather came to the conclusion that it was a wonderful martial art. The old man thinks that it hides great force, so you need to be very careful. The protagonist worries out if everything will be normal if he is studying the technique of Guan in this. The reason why Tian Tan is called one of the most important and stronger martial arts is not only because of the deep impact on Qi. It easily harmonizes with other martial arts. To lay the bases, and it is better than anything else. Even if the source of force is weak. This is one of the 3 great martial arts. Jinjon asks whether they can teach them at the same time. Guyang allows you to do this, because the technique of heaven and earth seems to be a wonderful martial art, so you need to carefully teach it. Soon, his grandfather says that he needs to go to the daughter. Before going, the old man asks the boy to finish the last details. They say goodbye. The protagonist is very glad that he can use 2 techniques at a time. Now it is only necessary to practice. At dawn, he will absorb the energy of yin, and during the day he will absorb the energy of yang. Thus, it can create a circulation of 2 energies. But first, you need to finish work. 3 days of hard work can be in vain, so you should be very careful. Suddenly, Uncle Sin approaches our hero. He goes leaning on a stick. Jinjon tells a beard that he has to finish this work today. It seems that the beard is still a little afraid of the guy because he stutters. Suddenly, he approaches Jinjona from his back and is mowed up with a stick that he had in his hands. Earlier, Uncle Sin was the second person on this island. The old man, the first man, was not interested in the rule of the island, so the beard behaved as a head for all prisoners. Due to this, the hay ate better than others. The man could also choose only easy help. He was wonderful in his life until this baby appeared on the island. This boy grew up every day. The young child was able to become a favorite of old Guyan. At some point, he began to be treated as the second most important person, and Uncle Sin felt incredibly envy and indignation. Because of this, the snot was the position of the hay on the island. The beard was ready to put up with the fact that he was second, but the third was not given. 2 people are enough to lead everyone. The beard remembers how he became the second person on the island when he was 22, and Uncle Sin tried to maintain his status for more than 10 years. Many of the prisoners were targeted, but the chunky man ended everyone who tried to conquer him. Even if he had to do these people cripples, the second place always remained it. That is why Uncle Sin was heavily envied and was angry with Mizunjona, who so brazenly took his place. Due to the strange abilities of this young man, the beard was forced to live in fear, hiding in the corners like a rat. The man is not going to give anyone his second place. An animal instinct is visible in his eyes. While the old man is not nearby, the boy behaves inattentively and relaxed. That is why, while Xinjiang sits with his back to him, in such a vulnerable position, the hay wants to strike an unexpected blow. The protagonist notices that Uncle Sin has long been quite quiet. Suddenly in the air, Hazin Ion smelled of malice, and Cheritan quickly shouted to him. Unfortunately, Xinjiang did not have time to react in time, so the man hurt him on his shoulder, which was why he sewed the instrument. But fortunately, the boy had a hammer in his hands that he could protect himself. It was only in a second of Jin Eon only to realize how serious the situation was. He felt that the beard was making another attempted stick to get a young man. But this time, Xinjiang reacts on time, and quickly covered with a blow with his hand, blocking it. Uncle Sin did not expect that Xinjiang would be able to effect his unexpected attack. The boy grabbed the stick that the man held and pulled on himself. After that, the protagonist prepared to strike, and in a second, the protagonist puts his head in his jaw. From such a strong blow, the man flies a few meters back and flies to the edge of the rock. Our hero understands that I overdo it, so he quickly runs after Uncle Hay. The beard is already flying down. If it falls, it will accurately break into sharp stones. But fortunately, Majin Ion has time to grab a man in time. The boy holds his best with a silky man with one hand. He asks Uncle Hay to stay stronger, because if he releases his hand, he will definitely die. The beard looks down and understands that there is a bunch of sharp stones. The hay with tears in his eyes pleads the boy to save him. This is his last hope. Cherutan. I do not understand why Jin John wants to save this freak if he tried to cripple him. Darkness says that no one knows that the boy is involved. Among the people who watch them are those who have seen everything that has happened. There are some who follow the beard, and if our hero now releases his hand, then people will think that he killed him. Jin John should avoid the accusations of murder. Now he is about to pull the man up. When the beard felt the ground under his feet again, he fell to it and trembled. The protagonist warns that if a man does something like this again, then he will not remain just like that. Uncle Sin sobs bitter tears and promises that he will do no one more. Jin John sighs hard because it seems that he is talking to a young child. Jin Ion considered himself guilty that he was hit and attacked. He was just inattentive. If it was a sword, not a stick, then the guy would have made his hand and he would have died exactly of blood loss. Jin Ion has already relaxed because his abilities have grown, so be more careful. Our hero turned to the darkness and said that he also behaved carefully. It was already night. The mustachioed man looked out the window. Suddenly, he heard someone knocking on the door. Guests came to daughter. It was Gu Yang. He seems to have a matter of daughter, but he did not know what the reason for the old visit, so he asked him about it. It turns out that my grandfather had a request for daughter. It has passed another day. Everyone worked hard and engaged in their business. The soldier screams loudly and tells the prisoner that lunch was coming. After lunch, they will start working again. The prisoner shouts to others that the time of lunch has come. Everyone was glad because it was time for lunch because the prisoners were already hungry. But our hero only sighed hard, putting his hands. It was 6 years after that conversation with the old man. During this time, a lot has happened. Uncle Sin approached Jinjoni and asked if he was going to go down. The protagonist kind says that Uncle Sin can go first. And the biggest change was in their communication with his Uncle Boratach, on the day that a terrible event happened. On that day, Uncle Sin on his knees apologized to Guyan for what he did. Since then, his grandfather ordered this to be drawn to our hero as his leader. Jin Ion saved him, though Sin almost killed him. That is why a man must pay him goodness. So his Uncle Beard became a helper of Hajin Jonah. Today the sun is very hell, but Guyang said that the hotter, the better for the guy. Yin and Yang are the harmony of heaven and earth. The main character just has to accept them. It has been 6 years since that moment. Time was constantly going. Jin Ayan had already begun to doubt whether it was possible to get out of this terrible island. If a boy takes over all his grandfather's martial arts, how strong will he become? This martial art man studied independently after his master gave him. In general, Gu Yang never compared himself with others, but his mentor is said to be one of the top 10 masters of the world. Gu Yang could not compete with the mentor because he was killed, but his grandfather did not think he is weaker than him. The old man asked if the boy wanted to learn this. The top 10 masters of the world are the 10 greatest masters of the world, so this martial art is equal to the 10 heavens. If someone would hear it, then I would have laughed. In the 5 years of study, Jin Ayan does not know whether he can compare, but is sure that his grandfather's martial art is not a joke at all. The protagonist is going to carefully learn and fulfill his grandfather's request. Then, my grandfather is about to tell him about everything tonight. The night came. They came to the edge of the rock. First, Gu Yang is about to teach him Shinsubekt. It was a very unusual technique. She involved hundreds of movements. She has no beginning and end. And the forms of this technique were endless. Harmony is valued here, so it is important to control chi during movements. Central Land's fighters call it Oriental martial art. Gu Yang coughed with blood after using this technique. His body was no longer the same as before. It means that it was free martial art. Initially, training will have to try hard because it will be difficult. But Jin John is ready to try because he knows that he will gain freedom after his studies. My grandfather also thought about the boy's words about freedom. Gu Yang didn't understand. The student talks about martial arts or ran from Cheonggundan. But his grandfather believes that he has no difference to what Majinion has. Gu Jian decides to tell our hero about one place. My grandfather went to daughter because he had a request for him. The daughter was surprised that Gu Jian asks him for something. Gu Yang asked for a child named Jin Joni could move freely along the island. Instead, my grandfather is going to pay for it and promises to create a special thing in 1 month. He was interested in daughter when he heard about some special thing in 1 month. This applies to the fact that Gu Yang usually did. For this, he wanted to give his child freedom. It was very unexpected, because my grandfather does a lot for the sake of this child. Isn't there anything else? To begin with, this will be enough. The daughter will remove the shackles from him and provide freedom in the Stone Mountains. But the daughter says that the Stone Mountains cannot be left. Gu Yang also asks to allow the use of the Eastern Cave. The daughter was allowed to do with this cave what they want because it is still empty. Gu Yang thanked the daughter for permission. After a while, his grandfather led the main character to the cave. This cave was found during excavations. For about 50 years, she was used as a house for workers. After mastering the mountain in the west, the dwelling was transferred there, and it is completely empty because it is too far from the site of development. But his grandfather assured that this is not an unnecessary cave. There is an open place that is known only to go. It was a place that saved my grandfather when he was between life and death. After a while, they come to the same place. There was some red waterfall. This is the secret of this cave. Grandpa called this place of Hyolyanch. Gu Yang was very grateful to this place, and soon Jin Eon would understand why so. After a while, the main character began training. Even in the rain, Hagen John continued to train hard. And after such difficult training, our hero came to the same place, went into the source, and rested. Both day and night, the protagonist continued to train carefully, accumulating his energy. Thus, summer changed autumn and autumn winter. It's been a while. Again the night came and Gu Yang told the guy to start. Jin Ayan gathered with thoughts, accumulated energy, and balanced his breath. Now he was ready for training. After a second, the guy struck a fist in the air. After that, our hero began to perform a series of strokes, showing the technique, which he studied. His fist was ready for the next blow. A second, the main character again beats his fist in the air, sending the energy beam straight forward. My grandfather watched every movement of his student carefully so as not to miss any details. Our hero was very pleased with himself. A smile was satisfied on his face. Gu Yang realized that it was time to finish. The working day came to the end, and they returned to their room. Jin Ayan was satisfied with today, although it was very difficult. Suddenly, our hero noticed that his grandfather did not enter the room. Gu Yang says this time, Jin John sat on the ship and left this island. It turns out that his grandfather has already agreed with daughter about this. Therefore, our hero may not worry about anything and just go. This news made the boy fall into a stupor. Jin John remembers himself a little few years ago. Since then, many years have passed. Jin Joni was worried that his grandfather would now be bored without him. As soon as Gu Yang sends the boy from here, he is about to do a special thing. In addition, he should look after the hay, so there will be no time to be bored. Jin John was glad that his grandfather would not have time to be bored and will be doing. Now our hero would like to hear Guyan. The gray man looks silently at the young man, thinking about his next words. Guyan notes that now our hero has become much stronger. After a second, the old man voices his request, from which Jijinjan was heavily shocked. It's been a while. The ship moved from the island. On the ship they transported sculptures made by Yan. It was important to make them reach the value. The soldier looks closely at the guy who does the sculpture. Our hero was completely bandaged with bandages so that his face was not visible. The soldier shouted at another subordinate for bringing to the sick ship. He was referring to a guy in bandages. The man tries to soften the situation and says that this guy has only wounds on his face. Especially he was paid half the price. The soldier is glad that they managed to save money. But next time the soldier says to hire only normal, healthy people. Soon, the last sculpture was stuck to the ship. After that, they raised the anchor, preparing to sail. Jijinjan looked overboard while they were still sailing from the island. The young man tightened the bandages from his face to breathe in the fresh air. Of course, Jinyon thought he would once be able to leave this island. But now everything seems so unrealistic as a dream. When the main character returns to the mainland, two things will have to be done. The first thing he wants to do is to save his father. Suddenly, Jinyon notices Guyan on the edge of the rock that escorts him. He was very pleased to see his teacher for goodbye. In fact, Jinjona gets even a little sad that he says goodbye to his grandfather. Very soon, the ship almost swims for the horizon. On that day, his grandfather confessed that his real name was Guyan Mubek. Even the child does not know this, because in their lists he counts like Guy. From such news, the protagonist is very shocked. Grandpa all this time hid his name. If this name sounds somewhere outside the island, they will be killed. Everyone, even whose name is simply similar to it, die. There is one person who is quite capable of it. The protagonist is shocking that there is such a cruel person. Gujan asks that when Jijinjan got out of the island, he found his brother guide Guyan Mugyan and killed him. The protagonist was shocked that his grandfather asks to kill his brother. Maganjan may be wrong, but he thought that Hujan Mugyan is the same man from 10 Heavenly Masters. It turns out that it really was. When the young man heard the name among Heavenly Masters, he immediately thought of his grandfather. Our hero did not think at all that they were somehow connected. But Jinjan did not understand why Guyang wanted to kill his own relative. In fact, it's not a grandfather's brother. The parents just adopted him. Before all, Hujan Mugyan is his enemy. The enemy who killed his parents, whom he loved so much. The protagonist does not know what to answer such a sad and tragic story. Then Guyang returned from 20-year-olds with his master. But it was too late, because their whole house was on fire and ruins. All whom the man loved and appreciated the Hujan Mugyan's hands. Ruthlessly killed. Gujan couldn't stop his bitter tears. He was destroyed directly in his eyes. He was not ready for it. It was because of his tears and sadness that Gun did not notice how this abomination came to him from behind. In his hands was a winged sword, which had the blood of relatives and loved ones. And because Guyang did not notice his enemy, he struck him. When the freak did it, he threw an exhausted and barely living man somewhere in the mountains. Although Guyang almost lost consciousness and his life ran away from him, he asked why his brother did so. Guyan explained that he returned the boron and returned his. But even after that, Guyang could not understand his brother's answers. Although he was not his brother, not a child in his family. But the man still does not understand how he could kill foster parents who raised him 30 years. Hujan mercilessly lost his brother, throwing him down from the rock. So far, Gujan has never been able to find out what debt his brother was about. It was very lucky to have thrown into this island, but his body was badly damaged, so he was forced to give up revenge. So his grandfather threw everything and lived on until he met Chazanjona. Our hero's inner strength and abilities have grown in such a barren environment. As soon as the old man saw the potential in it, he decided to take a step and ask him for it. He asked that Mjinjon made revenge for him. Guyang is not going to force the guy, but when Jinjon fulfills his wishes, his grandfather asks to fulfill him. Cherutan notices that the main character now has a strange mood. Finally, Jinjon woke up. The day was quite gloomy today, and nothing is visible in the sea. Thanks to his grandparents in Chongundan with our hero, there were no terrible situations, so he is very grateful to him. The fact that Jin Eon became stronger is also a credit to his grandfather. But magic also played a big role. Maybe Guyang supervised the boy to use for revenge. Maybe it was really the case, but Jin Jon was still going to fulfill his request. Jin Eon does not know his intentions at all. But if he has received help from his grandfather, he must pay off. The protagonist understands the feelings of his grandfather, because he also lost his family. But Cherutan, unlike him, is difficult to understand it. Suddenly drops begin to fall from the sky, rain begins. Cherutan says the guy go inside because if he remains here, he will get wet. After a while, all people gathered on the deck. They were very excited. The weather was very damaged, and the strengths of the ship were climbing in the sea. The man was well aware that the wind was increasing, and it was very bad. Fortunately, there is nothing serious with the ship, just the wind began to blow harder. Suddenly, they see something very terrible. Something that makes them spell in place from horror. Black twists were dragged in the sky, from which lightning broke out. She hit the sea directly, lifting strong waves. Everyone who was on the ship was much scared. They began to think that they had no chance of salvation. The beard tries to quench panic and tells them that everything will be fine. The main thing is to get out of the epicenter. Now everyone was in a panic. Cherutan suggested that the spatial wall had opened and was very surprised. Suddenly, Cherutan also called on the spot from what he saw. Their ship is about to cover the giant wave. The protagonist ordered the Cherutian to grab for something, not to fall overboard. But after a moment, a huge wave covered the ship. People and things on the ship fell overboard. Jin-Ion was underwater. He coughed because he spanned and he was not breathing. But in a second, the young man quenched and headed on the surface. In a few seconds, Jin-Jon is to blame and takes a sip of air. If our hero was a little underwater, he would definitely die. Jin-Ion quickly looks around and comes in a shock when he sees that the ship is destroyed, and people sank. It was a true horror. A lot of people were killed. Suddenly, a huge wave was flashing on our hero again, so there was no time to delay. It was necessary to use at least some magic. At that time, Jin-Joni quickly navigated and used the magic of flight. In a second, he flew over the water. Fortunately, the protagonist managed to fly. It was great, but because of such a strong wind, it was very difficult for the main character to keep balance. But the wind was very strong, so Jin-Jon could not stay and fell back into the sea. Even with the magic of flight, it was impossible to get out of here. Then Cherutan offers our hero an alternative, to call the spirit. But the main character does not understand where the spirit can be. He does not believe in this idea. Cherutan does not joke. When the lightning hit, he felt that the spatial gates had opened. Jin-Ion does not understand how it is related to the spirit. Cherutan continues and says he has felt several creatures in this crack. These were the spirits, 2 different worlds that never had to meet. But because of this lightning, a weak connection appeared. And the creatures of the other world, whom Cherutan felt as if they were gathering next to this crack of expanded dimension. Darkness cannot say for sure, but perhaps there are spirits among these creatures. Cherutan advises a guy to call the spirits that gathered next to the crack between the measurements. But it is dangerous to be so dispersed by the remaining energy. There is a risk that it will cause not a spirit, but someone else. It is very dangerous to do this in such a place. If some useless creature falls like a Cherutan, then Jin-Ion will die here. Certain assures that everything will be fine because he does not feel evil energy from the crack. Darkness tells the guy to come together with thoughts and call the spirit. Because there is no other way. There is nothing left but to try. There was a very high probability of an air element, so Cherutan advises the guy to cause the spirit of wind. Cherutan says he will understand the details. After a second, Jin-Jon begins to read the spell. It causes the spirit that controls the winds of the Mother Nature. He is about to conclude a contract with him, but nothing has happened, so the young man thinks that he has done something wrong. Cherutan considers it strange. He is sure that something was to appear. Jin-Jon does not see anyone, so he thinks that he only spent his efforts. Jin-Jon is already beginning to regret that he listened to Sertan. But suddenly someone appears in his face. It was a little fairy with beautiful purple wings. The fairy had long emerald hair, large purple wings, and a beautiful dress. She came for someone who wanted to conclude a contract. The main character was shocked from what he really managed to do it. The fairy had little time, so she asked the guy to tell her more quickly what he wanted. The fairy was very harsh and asked the guy to tell everything faster. The fairy has just passed through the spatial walls, so it is very tired. Jin-Jon was very restless in his soul. Usually he feels this with a certain. Jin-Jon asks if fairy will agree to conclude a contract with a guy. The fairy agrees because our hero has a lot of mana. Thus, they conclude a contract. This fairy is called Sylphine. She admits that she concludes a contract with a guy. Sylphine is pulled and yawning, saying that she is very tired, so she would like to relax. She looks around, trying to understand what it is for a place. She regrets because she came to the barrier. Cherutan thinks that this spirit is just unripe, so it behaves so strange. The protagonist thinks that he would better not call this fairy, because she will do nothing. They see that the storm begins to intensify. Lightnings are getting closer. Jin-Ion realizes that if it continues, they will definitely not get out of here. Sylphina is indignant because it is a terrible wind, and decides to remove it right now. After a second, Sylphina used her magic and cleansed thick clouds with one light movement. Jin Ayan and Cherutan were shocked from the fact that the sky became clean again in a few seconds. It was very good that the Sylphina got rid of the wind, but Jinjon did not think that he would be among the fixed sea. There will be a lot of magic to bring this board into the sky, so you can't just fly in vain, and just to sway on the waves is definitely not an option. Sylphina, of course, can create a wind so that they float, but it is tired and does not want. The fairy only wants to rest, but they were already resting for 3 days. In fact, the village simply does not like to work, but wants to relax all life. The protagonist again asked her to push this board with magic. The village does not like it, and she begins to think that she has not chosen that owner. Then, the boy is approached by Cherutan, saying that he will look somewhere. When the young man looks at the horizon, he sees ships there. They are too far, so it's hard to look. Sylphine was busy having pushed this board with the help of wind. Jinayan asks her to have an intelligence unnoticed, fly there and see that the ships were there on the horizon. Fortunately, the village knows how ships look in the human world. Because it is not a dull demon, Cherutan was outraged that such a lazy man was still talking about demons, but Jin-Eon was agreed with her. Jin-Jon says to the darkness to calm down because Sylphina does not even know about his existence. Although Cherutan is not a king of spirits, it may lose respect for it, because no third-rate spirit has the right to open his mouth. Soon Sylphina flew back. She put it for sure, and there were people on it. But she also said that these people on the ship are fighting now. It turns out that there was not one ship, but 2. On board one of the ships, there was now a real fight. Jin-Eon swam to the ship and quietly watched the battle of strangers. He hesitated whether to go on board, but after a moment, our hero quickly jumped on the ship. When Jae-Jin-Jon jumped on the ship, he saw a corpse of some man who was lying in his own blood. From such unexpectedness, he was a little scared. Jin-Eon only noticed that there were so many dead bodies and blood on board. It looked awful. Is this a reality? Jin-Jon should come together with thoughts to join this cruel world. If it makes him tremble, he will definitely do nothing. To begin with, the young man decided to calm down, because it was necessary to understand what. He notices that one of the men on the head has a bandage that painted the sea dragon. Their opponents were pirates. Maybe they were attacked? Then, the protagonist has already made a choice against whom he will speak in this struggle. Suddenly, someone noticed our hero. Without parsing, the pirate with the axe immediately attacked Mimjin-Jonah, preparing to cut it. But the pirate was moving too slowly for the young man, so he could easily evade. After a second, Jonah struck this scum on his face. From this blow, this abomination flew a few meters ago. Other pirates were shocked by such unexpected turn. They called in place of fear. The protagonist used the pirates in the stupor, so in a second, he struck another freak. With excessive force, the young man squeezes it into the floor, breaking it. Jin-Eon was ignited, ready to fight. The pirates also felt his determination, so they were scared. They seemed to feel the power of their enemy. A few seconds, Jin-Joni quickly scattered everyone who got in his way, the main character without any regret and doubt. Pirates weakened in the eyes. The man of sea dragons was shocked that these freaks dreamed of attacking them. He is about to take revenge on them for it. Central troops will simply not leave it. But the pirate head was too self-assured. He was going to end all the sea dragons. Our hero rushed to the pirate to protect the sea dragon, which was now in a difficult position. After a second, the young man used his magic to overcome this freak. The pirate did not expect it. He did not understand where this guy came from. Then, Jin-Yon again turns to the village to ask for something, and the fairy again complains that is tired. The guy asks to help him settle the magic of the wind, and then he will allow her to rest. From such arrogance, the pirates were very angry. Is this scum underestimates him? In a second, the pirate rushed at the young man, but he was already ready for his attack. It passed the moment. Jin-Yon used the magic of the wind, which made this abomination into the air with a sharp movement. The pirate captain did not understand what had happened, because he had never faced it before. Our hero sent the wind directly into the sea, with this man. After a second, it has already fallen into the water. It was very sorry that the pirates would now become shark feed, but it could be called karma. Just at this time, a shark, which had a delicious snack with this scum, came out of the sea. A second later, the head of the sea dragons approached our hero, and Jin-Ion introduced himself to him. As soon as the pirates saw that their captain had died, they began to shout and say that they needed to retreat. None of the pirates understood where this stranger who killed their captain came from. The pirates were outraged, but they warned it was not the end. They will definitely come back to overcome Cho Jongmon. Jongmon looks in a pirate ship that is gradually moving. The man looks back to the deck. There were many wounded and killed. After a second, our hero, who asks if he feels good, approaches him. Jongmon immediately bows when he sees a stranger who saved them. He is grateful to him for it. But the head of the sea dragons does not understand where the young man came from. because there were no other ships nearby. Zhijin Yan calmly tells that the ship on which he sailed has sank. That is why the main character was forced to drift on the door from the cabin. He shows his finger on the board that is quietly shaking on the sea waves. After a second, from where a girl appears to confirm her father that the words of this stranger are true. It was John Han, the daughter of the head of the sea dragons. The girl looked just wonderful, and especially Mimjinjoni liked her incredible eyes. John Hyang admits that she saw a stranger to their ship on that board through the gap, and the young lady was a famous drawing of the dragon depicted on the door. And if the girl remembers correctly, then it is the door of the cabin on the Singonho ship. Even from the deck, this sign is very difficult to see, but the girl was able to do it. It is amazing that this lady was able to recognize this pattern from such a small gap. This means that the Singonho ship got to the storm and crashed. But our hero does not look like a sailor, so Jeanmon asks a young man whether he really sailed on that ship. The main character is sure that he sailed on that ship. He explains this by the fact that he was a temporary sailor. They plugged things and got into a storm on the way. The ship turned through a strong wind. It was very unfortunate that such a large ship disappeared without a trace. John Hyang looked carefully at her father, feeling his sadness. She believes that her father needs to rest. And also this stranger was probably tired, because he sailed for 3 days. It would be rude to stand here, so the girl says that her father can ask a stranger with details later. In any case, Jeanmon is grateful to the guy for salvation. If not for him, they would have serious problems. He advises the young man to relax, and later he visits him. Jinjoni promises that a little later he will tell him all the details of what happened. Then, our hero is about to go to the cabin and relax. John Hyang is surprised that this guy can easily look in her eyes, as if nothing happened. Besides her family, no one can look so calmly in her eyes. John Myeon again asks whether all the words of Jinmon really are. The young lady was convinced that there was no lie in the words of the young man. Heavenly prediction reveals lies and truth. The eyes of divine providence will not be lied. If the ship faces a storm, then his father's friends, most likely, are already dead. It is natural for a sailor to die in the sea. That's what everyone says. After all, the man lost good sailors while looking for his friend's ship. The father regrets because he took his daughter, but the girl says she wanted it. It was already night. The protagonist told the man absolutely everything he knows. The head of the sea dragons asked that the guy was planning to do next. When they swim to the shore, our hero is about to go north. The young man has an important business that he must do. Then tomorrow, they will still go, and then change their course on the ground. The morning came the next day. The land was already visible from the ship. Jinjon looked at the ground and realized that somewhere there was his father. But the guy is very worried. Is he still alive or is it well with him? But in a second, he rejects these pessimistic thoughts and says that his father should definitely be alive. Finally, Jinjon returned. Soon the ship came to land. Jin Ion was very happy about it. He's already forgotten how it is on Earth, not on the island. They saw 3 men in front of them. One of them was more bold than the other. They seemed to be waiting for them. Jeonmun bows to these people and tells them that his uncle has returned. The bearded gray man praises Jongmon because he tried hard and it was visible. Recently, pirates have become more arrogant and it is very embarrassed by a man. Moreover, there was a strong wind. John Hyang had already checked Jin Jonah and confirmed the fact that he was telling a pure truth. Then, the bold man calls our hero to go for a minute. This man is called Yuk Daeho. He is the commander of the naval dragons, and he is very grateful to the guy for the salvation of people. But he wants to hear something else from a young man. However, for such conversations, the man invites the rescuer to go inside. But Jin Ion warns that little can tell, so you don't have to expect a lot from him. Our hero looked at their eyes full of curiosity. But Majin John is indifferent to his eyes that look at him, because he is only interested in John Han's beautiful eyes. But Cherutan does not understand that the girl's special glasses. On the contrary, it seems to him that she is always not satisfied with something. Cherutan says that from the very beginning the girl looked directly into their soul, and in such eyes there is nothing good. That is why Mjin Jono stamped her mind with the magic of the illusion that she could not shake their lies. But work is still not on its own, because this girl is very similar to the inhabitants. Jin Jon wants to close this topic. The wind intensified, the storm began, and such a large ship immediately sank, and only 1 person survived. The protagonist confirms these words and says he is just lucky. Before that, Jin Jon told them that he was a temporary sailor. Yuk Daeho knows that even a temporary sailor cannot get into Singanho if anyone recommended him. Only carefully selected sailors are selected for this ship. The man asks who exactly recommended the guy on the ship. No one noticed how Singanho disappeared because he always went to Cheonggundan regularly. And here, suddenly, There is only one person who survived, and the ship himself sank during a storm. It looks very suspicious, and the problem is that the one who survived it is an unknown person. Of course, those who sailed on the same day spoke of strong wind and waves, but absolutely no one remembered anything about the storm. The storm may only begin in the place where the spatial wall was opened. But Jinjon does not think that these people will believe in the existence of a spatial wall. They may even think that the young man lied. Our hero decided to ask directly that these people wanted to learn from him. It turns out that these people wanted to know the identity of this stranger. If it really was a storm, it could flood any ship, despite its large size. But even those who could be said to be born in the sea could not get out of there, and Jinjon survived, putting on the cabin door alone. Regardless of the fact that Jean Mayon recognized a young man as a skillful fighter, Yukdek is difficult to believe in it. Now the guy realized what was the matter. He laughed a little, then he paid the attention of the guards. Jinjon did not understand how such a degree could not be trusted by people. One of the solid six heard such arrogance. He was about to punish him. All present only silently watched this, flashing their mouths. Our hero understood that the attendees just want to know what he was capable of. After a second, the guard struck the young man. From such a blow, Jinjon flew back, but nevertheless, he stayed perfectly on his feet and blocked him. Then the guard quickly approached him. The man wanted to strike another stroke, but the young man was skillfully evading him. The guard did not give up and hurried to the guy again to draw him another blow. But the protagonist skillfully blocks absolutely all his blows, not going to attack him. But in a second, Jinjon is struck. The young man showed all his skills. A moment, the main character again struck, but this time with his foot. This blow was crucial. He was so strong that the dust came up. John Hyang was also shocked by what she just saw. Thus, Jin Ion showed everyone present that a very skilled fighter. But it seems that it was not difficult for our hero. The soldier was beaten and lay unconscious on earth. The man was completely off. All were shocked by demonstrated power. They even opened their mouths with surprise. Jin Ion was so fast that the soldier did not even have time to see his movements. He does not understand how possible. Yukdeha orders the commander of Guach to personally check this guy. Immediately afterwards, the warrior Guak goes to the square to check the guy's abilities. He praises his movements. They again ask the main character, but he has long told them everything. Then, Guak apologizes and preparing to get his sword to start a duel. The red man is going to interrogate Jinjona with his own sword. On his lips can be seen excitement. After a second, the battle begins. The warrior Guak attacks our hero, but Jin Yan quickly evades, skillfully jumping behind his enemy's back. The red soldier continues his attacks, but they were all in vain because the young man was skillfully evading everyone. It seems that the boy does not make much effort to evade and make all these movements. Jin Ion strongly beats the enemy in the chest. Guak was surprised that the blow was so strong. Although the guy was in an unstable position, it seemed that it was not an ordinary guy, but a real monster. Therefore, Guak decides that he should put into full because his opponent is also very strong. Jin Ion feels that the soldier is using Tao's energy. After a moment, he attempts. His blow was very strong, so the protagonist immediately felt this power. The soldier Guak assured that this time the young man would not just resist his strength and attacks. Then, a man uses a technique called cross-section, but Jijinjan is skillfully reflecting her with one fist. Purple smoke is flying everywhere. It was incredibly many. The young man looks straight, with his steadfast and confident look. The young man warns that if the soldier continues in the same spirit, he will stop holding back his strength and will show everything he is capable of. Guak seems to be very difficult. Blood flowed from his hand. After that, the soldier bows to the head and says that he tasted the name of the marine dragons by not being able to defeat this guy, so he cannot continue to serve. But Yukdeha says all is well. None of them expected the guy to be so strong. The soldier was injured by the greed of the head. Yukdeho approaches the young man and apologizes. He is sure that in their place he would have done the same. It is very sorry for the man that he was not able to respond with dignity to the guy's six, but only caused him failure and problems. In this case, Jinjan wants to ask for something in return. As far as the young man knows, there is no equal in the acquisition of information by Sea Dragon. It was really the case. Yukdeho asks that specifically the guy wants to know. The protagonist confesses that I would like to know a little more about the estate, but such information is very dangerous to disclose, and Yukdeho knows perfectly about it. Yukdeha promises that he will do his best, but what Huzin Eon is looking for can give great risks to the fleet. The guy just wants to know where to keep several people. If this cannot be done, it will not insist. Suddenly, a girl intervenes in their conversation. She remembers that the guy was going north. Jin confirms her words. She tells that they also have some things to do to midnight. She wants to tell him something. Our hero, of course, does not refuse to listen to it. They come to the room and sit down at the table, pouring tea to make something important. John Hyang was talking about escorts. The HA sister is very important at the Association of Trade. But lately, the road is not simple there. It has become very dangerous. So the HA sister has invited support to the Navy of Marine Dragons. Therefore, most likely, in a few days they will go north. Our hero asked if they can trust a person who is only known for a few days. The girl tells that he will also have to go there, because her sister said she wanted to see her. Unfortunately, they have very high losses due to pirates lately. A lot of talented masters were killed, and in such a situation it is unknown when they have a complaint from the association. It turns out that the young lady could not deny her sister Ha. If this happens, then John Han can only trust his eyes, and if the girl was wrong, then it will be in danger. The young lady seems to be very worried because her hands trembled, although this was not visible in the face. Jin John sighed heavily, but in a second he said he agreed to take this job. Cheritan reproaches the guy because he is too soft and is unable to say no. It turns out that they were going to take the guy not because they lack people. She cannot see the true essence of this guy, as if something constantly interferes with her. Such a master like him can definitely not be a temporary sailor. It was the only case in a girl's life when she cannot see a man's soul. She only can worry because I do not know what he has on his mind. John Hyang realizes that she began to behave somehow strangely after getting acquainted with this guy. It's been a while. They were going on a trip to the north. Jin Ion approached the girl and asked, "Did not the scientist clothes now?" The main character did not understand why he was given such clothes. John Hyang said it would solve the problem with the guy's face. Of course, he will not become a true scientist, so you should not be embarrassed. Until there is a danger, the girl asks to refrain from using his abilities. Our hero received his clothes solely as masking. Soon, another man approaches them who calls our hero his partner. This man introduced himself and reached out. He was called Yu Ryan. The boys shook their hand, strengthening their acquaintance. Yu Ryan is one of the 5 of their best masters. The girl believes that he will be useful because she has a lot of combat experience. The man is glad to work with the boy because he heard that he had overcome the commanding Guach. After that, they prepare for the trip and go to the carriage. But suddenly, the attention of Mijin Jonah is attracted by someone from the side. He sees the same man who has recently beaten. The young man asks whether all is well with his body, and he, as if frightened, calls him a lord and replies that all is well. The young man immediately became clear that this man was afraid of him. Finally, the preparation for the trip was completed. You could go. They have to take a long way, so it's better to go now. The carriage traveled quietly through the forest. Everything around was very green. Jin Jon did not smell the forest for a very long time, because he spent only on the island all the time. Oddly enough, the smell of forest is very different from the smell of the sea. In the forest bushes, someone is hiding, and it seems that our hero feels it. After a while, the tunes begin to become darker. It seems that the rain will start soon. John Hyang says that the downpour will start in about an hour, so you need to find a place where you can hide. Yu Ryan tells that near here there is a temple in which he can take them. The girl likes this idea because she doesn't think that the rain will end quickly. Today they will rest there and tomorrow they will go again. Yu Ryan thinks that this place does not look deserted, so he wants to look around. While he goes for intelligence, he asks our hero and the girl to be careful. Jin Joni calmly says that strangers contacted about 10 miles back. John Hyang is confused with this, and I do not understand why the young man is talking about it only now. It turns out that the guy just did not want the enemy to know that he was noticed. He is about to deal with them now. The girl in shock still does not understand what is happening here. Meanwhile, their carriage has already been surrounded on all sides. There were many men who had already declared their weapons. It was immediately clear that these people were quite hostile. Yu Ryan looked at them and realized that it was a great triad. The man was very angry because they dared to attack the association. But a bearded, arrogant man says he should not be justified before him. When these men contacted Chunad's organization, they began to do true evil. The man calmly acknowledges that everything was really surprising. It turns out that these freaks were ordered to pick up the John Hyang and lead to their master. A group that hunts women is worse than any robbers around the world. Hearing about such a statement in his direction, the man was very indignant. After a second, the author comes out of this phrase, our hero. The robbers thought he was an ordinary scientist, and was shocked that he dreamed of talking so roughly with them. Don Hogan was very angry and grabbed the guy by the collar, wanting to show that he was wrong. After a moment, he swung on him, preparing to strike. But Jin Joni easily stopped his hand. But it turns out that it was not all. This abomination tried to pour his inner strength into the young man. In this case, it will be enough to absorb it with all your technique. It was quite easy for our hero, and he immediately started acting. The robber did not expect such a turn of events. While the guy was holding his fist, the inner strength of the robber went to the young man. When the man understood it, he quickly removed his hand and pushed the young man. Don Ho fell into a stupor because he did not understand where the scientist was able to. It was clear that the main character tried to break the robber's hand with his energy. But how is it possible? Cheritan looked at our hero in surprise because he himself did not expect it. But Jinjon did not answer, but he looked at his hand. None of the robbers, and even their head, understood what it was. The head wanted to finish it peacefully, but realized that he would not work. After a second, he orders to kill everyone but a girl. The warriors immediately began to protect the carriage. They could not allow these vilers to get closer to the young lady. Just a few seconds, a real battle will begin. A lot of blood is sold. Finally, the first swords crossed each other. The head of the robber already got his sword, preparing for the fight. Just that the beard heard the evil energy that came from the protagonist. Therefore, the man decides to deal with him in the first place, believing that it will not be difficult. But Jinjon does not even get on himself. He squeezes his hand into the face of this scum. The young man uses the technique of celestial lights of fire, a fiery volley. The young man decided not to restrain himself and show all his strength. After a moment, everything around begins to burn and hugs bright fire. The abomination screams with pain because he did not expect that in a second his body would be a ward. Other robbers were shocked when they saw that their commander was beating in the pursuit of burning. The robbers urgently need to stifle their commander and begin to throw the land on him. But Jin Ion uses the fact that they have lost their precedence and find themselves right behind their backs. Robbers do not have time to do nothing, as the guy already beats them in the face. The enemies continue to step and prepare to attack the young man, but he successfully evades and blocks all their blows. After that, the young man uses his magic, which is why there is a real explosion, and the earth almost goes from under his feet. The robbers are completely shocked after such, because they were all crushed. It was a devilish equipment, a fiery martial art. It seemed as if they were not a person, but a real monster. After a moment, Jijin Joni applies a strong blow to the enemy on the face, seating it into the ground. The young man advises robbers that are still alive to surrender right now and run away. Because if they do not, they will soon regret it. All robbers were full of shock from what just happened. Many of these abominations have already fallen in this struggle, without the opportunity to continue it. Our hero was incredibly angry. The robber hopes that if he seems, our hero will pity him and will not kill him. Mzinjan does not enjoy someone's death at all, so there is no point in killing people who are about to give up. But the main character is interested in what purpose they wanted to steal the girl. The guy will not wait long, so he asks to answer his question faster. He recalls that their head was seriously injured, and if not taken to the doctor, he may die. Then the man confesses that it was a request of Chunad. If this robber means this organization, then they are most likely to ask the gentleman about it. The robber confirms the girl's words. The gentleman so ordered John Hyang, and that is why they decided to do it in such a radical way. The robbers were ordered to bring a girl, so they did so. Meanwhile, Yu Ryan continues to fight one of the robbers, and just knocks out his weapon from his hands. He asks the enemy to stop. Yu Ryan doubts that their gentleman will want a full-scale war. In addition, even if the robber continues to fight, he still has no chance. Although it is very difficult to believe, they have a very capable fighter. Soon, robbers still decide to retreat. They take the wounded to take them to the doctor. Our hero set fire to man with magic, though he couldn't do it. At the moment when Jinjon began to suck his internal energy, his thirst for killings grew greatly. But the young man did not even try to reduce it. If they continued to attack, then the guy would definitely kill everyone. The guy begins to think that there is something else he doesn't know about. Very, very strong rain begins as they thought. But, fortunately, our characters just had time to come to the temple to hide from the rain. John Hyang sincerely thanked our hero for salvation, because if it were not for him, they would definitely not go out of there. Jin Ion is not required to gratitude because he did nothing special. However, he wants to find out who the gentleman is. Then, the girl begins her story about this master. The organization of Chunad is one of the 3 largest trade groups. The leader of this organization is a Chunbo, and his second son, So In Han, is a young gentleman, so she said. The protagonist wants to know why this guy wanted to steal a girl. 10 months ago, Hawks arrived from Chunad. The young gentleman said that he wanted to take John Han to himself. Last year, for the 60th anniversary of his grandparents, he said that he wanted to see the whole area of Godzu, so John Han accompanied him. Most likely, it was at that moment that the guy noticed the girl. Although John Hyang's father was strongly opposed to it, No one would give up such a profitable marriage, so Zinayan did not understand why the girl's father refused. This may be because marine dragons belong to the association. The young man was very wondering if the girl wanted to marry that guy. If it was possible to give up so much, it would not bring so much pain. After a while, a person comes to the room and says that John Hyang has already come. This meant that the brother would come so too, and it could not but please the girl. The man got the news that Hyo is now next to the teen. The guy should go there too because he is very curious about how well the girl became beautiful until they saw. The girl saw perfectly that in the heart of this boy there is John Hyang. It was obvious, but the guy immediately began to deny it. He only tries to attract her attention so that the HA plan to come true. But in order for their plan to come true, we must try very hard. The parental home is already waiting for it. It is thanks to this that Sister Ha will decide how to treat the boy, so she asks him not to disappoint her. The guy assures the lady that he should not be embarrassed, because he will do everything to erase the Ion Han from the heart of the Lord. But he also wants to erase the young gentleman from the head of the young lady John Hyang. This is exactly what Mr. Han wants. Yu Ryan, Jin Yeon, and Ion Hyang went to the establishment to eat and relax. It is very good that there were no attacks in Teen. Yu Ryan asks in a young lady whether she is about to climb Taishan today. John Hyang says it will be better to rest here today, and tomorrow there is already going there in the morning. Suddenly, a young man who has not seen Lady Han has been approaching their table. It turns out that it was a gentleman. The girl immediately recognized him, although they never saw about a year. The gentleman was so glad to see the girl because the year was a very long time. The young gentleman says that during this time his heart was filled with excitement and worries. The protagonist also listened very carefully to Mr. who had just approached their table. The young gentleman apologizes for the incident that happened to their detachment. There was a misunderstanding because the subordinates misunderstood his order. He is justified, and says he asked the subordinates to kindly accomplish the girl to him, but they listened to this moment. However, John Hyang was not ridiculous at all, because of this incident, a person almost died. Fortunately, all alive. So the gentleman told them to keep their mouths on the castle so that they did not even spread about the incident. The gentleman also apologized to the sea dragons, so there are no problems. Jinjon concludes that this young man is very self-confident. After a second, the gentleman appeals to our hero. The triad has already told him about this scientist. Hazinjan says he is what to say to this guy. Our hero has never seen people like the gentleman so well, so he advises him to be careful. But the young gentleman says that this applies to everyone who has the martial arts. Lady Hyang silently watched their conversation. She interrupts the Lord and says that they are not tuned now because they would like to go and relax. On the way, a young gentleman has made them a lot of problems, so they are very tired and want to relax. The gentleman understands this and says they rest well. Tomorrow, the guy will visit them again. But John Han says that tomorrow the guy is also better not to come, because in the morning, they go to Taishan. The self-confident guy is not going to listen to her, and again says they will see tomorrow. It seems that his behavior is a bit annoyed by Ms. Jinjona. It came tomorrow morning. They were going to go, but the gentleman still tied them. After a second, a subordinate sister Ha. He kindly congratulated them. The young man was very glad to see guests. In a second, he runs up to John Hyang, immediately making compliments and saying that she is like a beautiful flower. It is said that the brother is so good at Mrs. Yanho in a very good time. The gentleman is so annoyed from such words because he did not get along with Mrs. Yanho. The young man saw his annoyance and immediately tried to reassure. The guy thinks that it is difficult for a gentleman to say that before Mrs. Hyang. The gentleman is so outraged by the fact that the guy carries some delusion. He was reached by the news from Chunva. He heard that next month there would be an engagement of Mrs. Yanho and Mr. It was rumored that they fell in love when they went on a joint journey, so the guy thought it was true. The gentleman denies it all and says that he just met the girl while traveling. That's everything. Although there are rumors about the wedding with the Yanho family, it was not at all included in his plans. Then, the young man apologizes for his words. Just the guy hopes that the engagement will not be torn, due to the fact that the brother was so chased after the other, while there were negotiations about marriage to Ms. Gonson. The guy did not want to listen to this delusion anymore and shouted at the Hunsana to keep track of his tongue. The young gentleman has destroyed Mrs. Gonson's engagement and now wants to do it with Mrs. Yanho. In a second, the young gentleman struck Hunsana on his face so that he would definitely silence. Lady Hyang and Jin Joni silently watched the circus that is going right in front of their faces. The gentleman explained so clearly that such a beacon should not be said. Hunsan wiped the lip from the blood. Is it so easy for a brother to bring it to his fists? But Hunsan seems to be not against it, because they have not been fighting for so long. The gentleman also flashes energy, preparing for the battle for his pride and honor. There was a very tense atmosphere between the boys. It seemed as if the air would tremble. It is amazing that the son of the head of the trade association had such a story. It is much stronger than a large triad. It may even be compared to Guakchon. John Hyang thinks that they need to be separated, but Jin Yon realizes that these two are not the ones you can agree with. Suddenly, someone goes to the yard for noise. The mistakes have not yet ended. The HA sister came out to see who was using internal energy at the place of rites. The girl asks Gunsana to meet guests, not to arrange fights here. She approaches the guy and needs explanations, but he does not know what to answer. The gentleman acknowledges that he made the mistake, because for the first time in a long time he wanted to compete with his brother Ha. Therefore, he approaches the girl and apologizes. The girl was a little ashamed when she learned that her brother came here to see her, although it was not quite true, but he is also glad to see it. Lady Hyang is welcome with Sister Ha. She has made a lot of efforts to organize mistakes. It was the duty of Sister Ha, so there was nothing like that. She asked them to follow the Hun-san, and the girl will soon join them. She has something to tell John Hyang. Cherutan asks, does Jin Jono really don't need to go there with this girl? But nothing can be done, because John Hyang said that she had to talk to one with Heju Ron. But our hero is worried that these people are in their heads. Suddenly, the protagonist notices a man who sits in the walls and does something. It seems to be Taos. Cherutan asks what has happened because he sees that Joni has changed his face, but he asks to not pay attention. Suddenly, this unfamiliar man just disappeared. It disappeared as if it were not there. The protagonist quickly runs to the place where he had just seen the man. He just disappeared without a trace. Jinyeon heard that in this world there are so many people with special abilities, as there are grains. People do not know that some mediocre skill will be difficult to deceive our hero's eyes. They look closely at the sand and see that something is written there. Cha-sin. It looks like an ancient language. The young man is inflamed when he sees it. Suddenly, he draws attention to some old grandfather who passed by and calls him. Shinjoni would very much like to know something in my grandfather. He asks whether one skinny dude who has very strapped hair lives here. The old man immediately understands that it is a hungry. The protagonist does not understand why the man was called hunted, but wants to know the cause. He says that the old man has gone crazy 20 years ago. He is not here because of the ceremony, but just walks. Therefore, the old man tells the young man that you should not even pay attention to him. But Jinjon asks where he can find that hunter. Grandpa does not understand why he needs it. But, after all, he is about to tell the young man about the place where this hunted often appears. The night has come. Jinyeon looked at the moon from the top of the mountain, and it looked in a special way. The protagonist feels someone and says that the stranger goes out because he already knows about him. After a moment, motion is heard in the bushes. After that, the same old man he saw this morning comes out of the thick forest bushes. The protagonist says that it does not matter who he is. In this case, the old man asks what is important for this young man. Hygen-jon says he wants to know about Cha-chin. Along with this word, the sand was written in the sand. Grandpa still does not understand why such a young scientist needs such old writings. Mijin-jon explains that he is simply interested in old writings. There is no reason for it. Then, my grandfather wants to ask a young man a completely different question. A gray man asks whether a guy is now. He seriously asks if there is someone else inside the guy. The protagonist tenses from such words and asks what it means. Grandpa feels that our hero comes very strange energy. And this energy is not human, but quite different. It is radically different. Does this old man mean a certain? Jinjon will be very difficult to answer his questions. Hygen-jon can only say that what is not harmful to anyone inside him. It is not even able to do anything with Mijin-jono, not to mention others. There are many mysterious things in the world, and a man is pleased to know that this guy is one of them. The main character sincerely thank him if he really thinks. But it is very interesting for the guy to know how this grandfather realized that he was living another soul inside. The grandfather does not answer it, but he still tells the guy to follow him. After that, they head deep into the forest. After a while, they come to the waterfall. Is this what I wanted to show him his grandfather? The main character sees a lot of different runes on the wall, but does not understand why the old man shows it to him. This is one of the 18 scriptures that my grandfather found. He read all the books in the mentor room without his permission. It was thanks to him that he saw the little secret of Mijin-jona, but it was only a small part of what he could find out. There was no progress further. Then he proposes to a young scientist to resolve this issue together, to decipher ancient writings, to learn about Cha-chin, and how many people in the world still have a second soul. Jin-ion studied it a long time ago, so I don't know much. It will take a long time to decipher these writings. Is there a person who is able to immediately disassemble these writings? It has been over 10 years since such a person has been sharpened in Imperial prison. It is unknown if he lived. Jinjeon wants to save this person, which is why he wants to move north. Then, the old man says he also wants to go with our hero. When they gathered on the road, Jinjeon gave him other new clothes. My grandfather did not understand why to dress up. Is the old man really going to walk in those rags? However, my grandfather really sees nothing like that. But Jinjeon says that everything has a limit. Our hero asks who his grandfather wanted to meet before they go north. The old man tells you that I would very much like to meet his mentor before going. For 20 years, his mentor was angry at him, so he must meet him at least once before the trip. Jin Ion warns that in 20 years, the images of a grandfather can kill. However, the old man is not afraid at all. The grandfather is about to go to the mentor, but the boy asks to stay here. After a few seconds, the old man opens the door to the room and healthy with his mentor. But in a second, strong cries are heard. The mentor screams loudly at his student, because the insult is still sitting inside him. When the mentor remembers all the braids that the student made, anger captures him again. After a while, John Han, who asks what happened here, approaches our hero. Majin John says that nothing is happening here and jokes that it is just a sharp love. This is what has accumulated in 20 years, so it will take some time. Jijin Eon notices that John Hyang looks like a sad and anxious after meeting with Mrs. Ha, so he asks what happened. It turns out that Sister Ha said she would also go with them north. In fact, the girl is just worried about the father who is left in the association. But our hero said that it would be better to worry about her sister Ha. Soon, the old man was expelled from this room by force. It did his mentor. Before going his grandfather, he said that he would return to the mentor. He should not be ill. The mentor says that if the student goes north, let him find his uncle who can feed him. Immediately afterwards, he rakes the door loudly. Jinjeon thinks that the old man could have avoided it. But my grandfather is sure that it was the best way to release his mentor's anger. Sometimes it is necessary to release steam. Our hero is a little jealous that there are people who are capable of this. The young lady appeals to the main character and asks that this is a grandfather near him. My grandfather decided to introduce himself. His name is John Guvan, and he decided to go north with this young boy. After a while, they finally go on the road. The carriage was very quiet. Grandpa seems to be dorming. It was obvious that San accompanies them on the way north. It was because he had to follow the Huz Ron, but Jinjeon did not understand that this guy had forgotten on this trip. Is he going to follow Lady Han here? In fact, it looked disgusting. But suddenly, a man who was traveling ahead of all and ordered them to stop. Hun-sen did not understand what had happened, so he asked the man. They saw many men sitting on the ground. These people completely prevented them with their way. They could not be gone. Their clothes can be understood that these were Cheonmyeon Mountain, but the guy could not understand why they were blocking them. It was unknown, but these people are definitely not enemies. They have a good relationship with people from this area. Other soldiers are going to go to them and find out what is the matter. The head of the residence, Chong'an, told his comrades that two were approaching. In a second, he ordered them to prepare. Immediately afterwards, they grabbed their weapons firmly. Suddenly, the protagonist also felt something bad. When his grandfather woke up, he did not see anyone in the carriage. There was no guy. Jinjeon hurried to the captain. The protagonist asked the captain to withdraw the soldier back because it could be Easter. The captain did not realize that our hero meant when he said something about the trap. Hun-sen agrees and says there's nothing wrong with being careful, so you should really call the soldier back. As soon as the captain says that these people are not enemies to them, they are attached to those two soldiers with weapons. They quickly and without regretfully kill these people, struck by the sword directly into their chest. The captain was shocked what had just happened. He did not understand why they did it. The captain was shocked what had just happened. He could not believe in the truth of this situation. The subordinates asked the heads of their subsequent plans and whether they should be attacked. He ordered his subordinates to break through the guard and kill the girl who is now in the carriage. After a second, he shouts and gives his subordinate order to attack. They all run to the carriage, but they have our hero on the road. But the protagonist begins to defend the carriage bravely. He will not let anyone offend the girl. When he saw that they were running to the carriage, he immediately realized that their goal was Mrs. Hyang. After a second, Jinjeon called the village, which immediately began to regret it. The fairy began to use her forces and created a strong wind that sent to the enemies. And the young man, meanwhile, used the magic of fire. So they made a real fiery tornado. He released all his forces. Sylphina hoped that it was all, and now she could go and relax. From such a strong attack, it is obvious that the enemies almost died. The young man realized that if you use basic magic, he did not have a thirst for murder, like last time. Now the protagonist exactly understood what the problem was. Therefore, Jin Ion asked Cherutan just in case to react his magical power. Meanwhile, the enemies continued to step. They ran to the captain of marine dragons. The man was still shocked that Chongyun's warriors dreamed of doing so with them. He also started the attack. Other enemies have already run to him, preparing to kill him. But the captain stood bravely, preparing to accept all their attacks. He, as a real master, quickly and lightly deprived them of life. But suddenly, another enemy, which he did not notice, was behind his back. However, fortunately, the captain managed to turn around in time and block the blow. If it weren't for his reaction, he would already be dead. But still, the blow was very strong, so the man rejected it strongly, though he had time to block him. The captain saw who attacked him. He recognized in his enemy to the Muna. But the man was not going to answer him. After a second, he jumped and preparing for a blow. The captain wanted to find out the reason why these freaks attacked them. How could mountain inhabitants go to this? But Chumun is not going to answer it, because it is not a matter of marine dragons. Their battle continues. The heat begins. The captain applies a strong blow, but the enemy evades in time, so he does not even affect him. Chumun also attempts to strike back. The captain does not have time to do anything, so the enemy knocks the sword out of his hands. The enemy promises that they will leave immediately after they deal with the girl they have in their carriage. But after that, the freak adds that they will only leave after they kill absolutely everyone. Suddenly, an old hunger appeared between the men, who shook the sword of this freak one by blow, saving the captain. Grandpa, and it was clear that they were going to kill everyone. Chumun was exactly shocked that this old man had managed to repel such a severe attack so quickly. He was greatly surprised that this stranger blocked his attack by a regular footbell. And yet, from such power, a man has fallen his hand. This meant that the enemy that stands before him is very strong. That is why Chumun is not going to think for a long time, and decides that it is better to develop this scum immediately. A moment. The enemy applies a very strong blow. Such a blow appears a huge, deep ditch that stretches a few meters forward. Chumun thinks that his enemy disappeared, but it was not. Grandpa was already right above him. But the enemy managed to block his blow in time, would still be a second, and it would no longer be alive. John Guvan quietly landed on the ground. Grandpa's movements were lightning and accurate. He accurately struck his enemy. The old man continued to block absolutely all attacks of this freak. But Chumun is convinced that now he can break his grandfather's breasts. But my grandfather is not going to give up. It will stand until the end. Chon Guvan continues to strike and evade. And in a second, the old man applies a strong stroke right on the face. From such a strong blow, Chumun loses consciousness. Another from the hungry and could not expect. From such a strong blow, the man literally seated into the ground. Immediately afterwards, Chumun got up, but it was difficult for him. He had a lot of pain. Chumun only now realized that he would not be able to defeat his enemy because he was too strong. Chumun fully recognizes that I will not be able to do anything in this situation. Therefore, the man decided to retreat. After a second, the man disappears, leaving his grandfather himself. Meanwhile, our hero continues the fight. It destroys enemies one by one. Jin Aion seems to be not at all intense from this struggle. He wants to finish it faster. Suddenly, he sees another enemy from the side, the same Chumun. Chumun thinks that if he could not defeat that old grandfather, now he wants to at least deal with this abomination. But Jijin Joni skillfully blocked the enemy's blow, grabbing his hand. The main character is surprised because he first sees this man and asks who he is. Chumun is shocked by the strength of this young man. He grabbed a man so much that he could not move his hand. Chumun yells and orders him to be released, because he is from the fortress of Pek. But our hero is absolutely indifferent to it. When the enemies saw that their head had won, they decided to retreat. They seemed to have definitely no chance of winning, but their path was hindered by Hun San, who sent his sword on them. They did not have time to do absolutely nothing, as they were surrounded by sea dragons. The captain ordered not to let anyone out. They will pay for daring to attack them. Suddenly, Mrs. Ha came out of the carriage. She wanted to go to criminals. The captain says it is very dangerous here. So she asks the girl to go back to the carriage. But the girl was not going to turn back if they came to Chumun himself. This meant that they were sent directly from the fortress. They performed tasks from the Manga Mountains who are at odds with their trade association. They seem to have attacked to kill Mrs. Ha at Mangim. Only now our hero realized that their purpose was not Mrs. Hiang. Lady Ha asks the captain to release these people. It is very surprising, the captain. Lady believes that it is better for them to get out of here faster. He orders them to do wounded. Jin John is surprised that Lady just releases those who just tried to kill her. Enemies want to retreat. They also suffered very great losses because of them. Lady Ha asks them to convey hello Lord Fortress Pekma. Although these freaks and attacked them, but the sea dragons greed their own. The enemies are grateful for such mercy. Immediately afterwards, those who stayed alive from the enemies ran away. Lady Ha asks them to collect bodies and heal wounds to those who have suffered. After that, they will go on the road again. Judging by this, the girl said earlier, the fortress of Peckham and Mangam will be in a difficult situation. They will return alive only because they were forgiven and released by the person they tried to kill. If they do not want to be reproached in the future, they will need to forget about the trade association once and for all. Jin Ion could not understand what this girl thinks about. Her thoughts for him is a real mystery. Lady Han asks if the sister hat feels good. Fortunately, this did not cause any problems, so the girl is all right. Sister Ha thought about Mzin Jonah. She couldn't help but notice that it was a very unusual boy. He can do such amazing things. John Hyang sees that the girl has thought about something. The girl immediately apologizes and says she just thought a little. Nothing serious happened. She proposes to wait in a carriage for them to get ready for the trip. John Han noticed something strange in her sister's gaze. She remembers how she saw a killed man from whose chest he was sticking out of the sword, and he sat in a puddle of his own blood. She remembered what fear she looked at it. John Hyang is scary to even imagine that the sister Ha will do this time. The news of the defeat is already reaching the head. Instead of killing a girl, they only blamed him. These freaks will only lose the name of the fortress. He orders them to go and find out where the people who beat Muno so much came from. After a second, another subordinate comes to the master. The shared, chunky man tells the head that he will personally take up the case. But the head does not quite trust him, because last time he did a lot of fools. But not thinking for a long time, the head agrees and orders the subordinate to go and learn about everything. But the main thing is not to touch the association, because it is not time for it. The shaved man bows and says he will definitely do it. The evening has come. Hun-san and Mr. So discussing the wonderful abilities of Jin Jonah, because it cannot be silent. However, the gentleman does not want to admit how capable of the guy, and says it was ordinary martial art. Having said that, the guy went away. If you can benefit from this power, what is the difference that is the martial art? The main character said that tomorrow in the morning they would already go on the road. John Hyang thanked the man for defense. If it were not a Jigen, they would definitely not be able to get alive. Our hero is wondering that now the girl is about to do. John Hyang, with a smile on her face, said they had news from the head. To improve the relationship with the naval dragons, they want to tie a girl with a young Mr. Hun-san. The father gave up marriage to Mr. Such. It seems because of the problems he had arranged to them. Therefore, to begin with, you will need to deal with this business. The young man thinks that this is Mrs. Ha tried. John Hyang also thinks like this, but it is not a statement, but just her assumption. She seems to have an interest in the Lord. Probably. That's all to get it. Perhaps the matter is still unusual eyes by John Hyang. The sister wants to assure that no one will take anything. Jin John is wondering what will happen if the girl refuses. Fleet support will be stopped. Even if marine dragons are on the verge of disappearance, the association will not reach a help. Dark times have come, but if Jin John needed, he is ready to help. But John Hyang says it is not necessary. She was just tired of everything, so she wanted to speak to anyone. It seems that it was very strange, because still Jin Ion was not associated with her. John Hyang wants to ask a guy about something. If something happens to her, or with a naval dragon, she asks to take care of her father. Came the next day. John Guvan asks the young man whether nothing happened last night. Finally, Jin Ion will return to his home, but now he looks quite depressed. It turns out that the guy has one thing that he needs to think about. Of course, the main character really wants to help Ms. Hyang, Mrs. Cho and Han Union to keep it nearby. Perhaps Sister Ha and will not hurry. Of course, it will not have a bunch of time. Therefore, at first, Hygen John decides to deal with his father. Finally, they come to the right place. The guy is very tense and excited. Jin John is hesitant before opening these cursed doors. Something inside him doubts. Finally, Jin John knocks on the door. Someone replies to him. The guy recognizes the voice of Nanny and says he came. The woman over the years has aged. She did not understand who was behind the door. In a second, she opened the door, but did not recognize the one who stood on the threshold. Our hero immediately introduced himself and said that he was Jin Ion. The woman was in full shock when she saw a young, healthy, and beautiful young gentleman in front of her. It's hard to believe that this is true. The woman immediately begins to cry, because it is difficult for her to believe that it is not a dream. Immediately afterwards, the main character again goes to his home, which has not been for many years. When he passes by his father, Six, he remembers how he used to sit here at the table and worked. Our hero hugged a sense of nostalgia. He sadly looked and touched his father's things. After a second, he returned to the wall and saw the very picture behind which he was a passage to his father's repository. Cheritan thinks that you will need to go down to decipher old scriptures on a stone tile. The protagonist is sure to do this after he saves his father. The young man explains that the memories covered him. He has to save his father, but the woman quietly and sadly tells the young gentleman that his father disappeared without a trace. Jin Ion was shocked when he heard about this news. He does not understand how his father could disappear. General Yuk came and told the woman that the prison in which his father was destroyed, and the man just disappeared. Our hero immediately realized that we were talking about General Yuk Dugama. He from time to time came with the news about the master. Only because of this did the woman last life. The nanny believed in all her heart that Jin Hong would ever return to her home. The nanny also tells that Uncle John has already died. 2 years ago, the bandits attacked his return way from the imperial estate, but these robbers were not caught. Uncle Chan's body took away a man. The protagonist was very angry and alarmed. He did not understand what was happening here. Then, the protagonist decided to go in search of a man who is known about his father at least. The man was glad to see the young man again. From Nanny, Hygen John heard that a man became a lord after finding a criminal who stole gold from the temple. Although it was too late, but the guy greeted him with it. Also, our hero thanks to the man for helping the nanny until he was. He sees nothing about it because he just told her about the location of the prisoner. And he did all this because of the guilt before Mjin John. But it was more important now that the guy returned from the island. Does he want to know more about his father? The young man came to find out about the disappearance of his father. The man remained silent and then added that it was a very strange thing. The camera in which the scientist was located was in a common building, and it could not be opened from the inside. Hygen John suggests that maybe his father was stolen, but Lord doesn't think about it. The Emperor himself personally watched for KO. The check was carried out very strictly. No one would have thought to steal the scientist. In addition, the walls of the camera were destroyed by a strong explosion, there from the inside. Our hero thought that his father himself escaped from prison. It looked like that. It seems that the Emperor was also surprised. They conducted a thorough investigation, but could not find anything. Lord personally searched Mjinhan, but this did not lead to any results. Then, the main character asks permission to investigate the estate. He hopes that his father could leave something there. No one but Jin Jonah will be able to recognize it. Does the young man think that his father could leave something? The guy tells that the father did so, and before he got to the estate. If so, Lord is convinced that Jin Ion will definitely not tell him if he finds something. It was really the case. It is right now that it will be difficult for a young man to talk about this Lord. It will be difficult to convince Mjin Jonah and another. But Lord will remember his words. If the main character wants to come to the estate personally, then it will not work. Because now it will be problematic. Lord wants to know if the guy had mastered martial arts. It so happened that his grandfather on Chongundan was a master, and the young man learned a lot from him. Lord immediately realized that it was an old man. Chongogundan Island is always under a very careful guard of the army, so Lord knows a little about this old man. Through the Emperor's eyes, a letter could not be sent there, but he felt a little relief when he learned that Jin Ion under the supervision of Gan. It is enough why our hero has learned from this. Until the young man finishes the investigation, the Lord will give him a high rank. It will not be possible to give permission to investigate an unknown person, as it will affect the pride of other officials responsible for the safety of the estate. But if the guy has a flat position, then no one will say anything. The Shaved, meanwhile, is trying to find out the location of our heroes, although it is very difficult. He comes to him with news that their goal has already left this place. It is not known exactly where they went, but it is known that north of the estate. The Shaved man is angry at the subordinate, because he could not even find out what road they were going. He strongly threw him on the ground and ordered him to find this information by tomorrow if he wanted to be alive. A frightened man promises that he will do everything in his power. Came the next day. Lord shows the young man the same place where everything happened. There was a huge hole in the wall. The stones from the inside flew out. Our hero does not know if his father and strength to break such a large and thick wall. Inside on the floor were papers and some records made by his father. Jin John is wondering whether his father was difficult here. Although this is a stupid question, it would be strange if he did not experience difficulties here. But Lord says it was only from the beginning. The scientist did not like his work. It seems that he was tortured and mocked him. But shortly after that it happened a little very strange. It seemed as if Jin Hong had taken over the Emperor. When the scientist asked for something from the Emperor, he immediately and without denial performed all his whims. That no one else could meet him and the camera was clean. It is said that at the request of the scientist, every 3 to 4 days, he was brought to him hundreds of very rare and old books. The protagonist wants to find out what it was for books. Lord thinks, could a man write something inside them? Still, they needed a scientist for something, which means that he did something with them. Lord says that when the books were made from here, They were thoroughly checked so that there was nothing superfluous. Scientists needed to know whether such valuable books were damaged and contaminated, so they would immediately notice if new records appeared in the books. The Emperor could have a personal check, but there was one thing. There are things that even 100 people will not be able to notice. Lord asks the guy that he is now going to do it. Today it is very late to follow books. Even if you go to the library now, it will be closed. Then, the protagonist says he wants to look carefully here. Lord leaves him himself and says he will go. He recalled that Mizunjona's friend is waiting for him on the street, so he should not be delayed. Finally, the young man remained completely himself. Investigations have already been conducted here, so most likely they were thrown away. And what remained, there is no value. Mizunjon looks carefully around, but does not see any babies at all. Suddenly, the attention of our hero attracts the tapestry that hangs on the wall. It draws a tree. It was a Sisachi bribe, the trinity of poetry, calligraphy, and fine arts. On his hand the shadow of the bird, and after one more, and here are 2 of them. But suddenly you will see the birds, and the shadow of the 3rd bird, but in fact there are only 2. Who is looking for, he will always find. Our hero could not understand what these words mean. It seemed that this text was written by the child for the sake of jokes. But nevertheless, this text sounds very familiar. The young man heard him somewhere. Then he remembers his childhood and what his father said, that the training never ends. Just like these old writings, which his father studies. At first glance, it is similar to the traces of birds, as if the baby had scratched. But if you look on the other side, you can see that there is a person's soul. If you know one thing, then the other too. Jin Eon tried to understand what meaning was put here. He sees runes and ciphers before his eyes. John Guven was angry because the boy was waiting for the whole day, and even the night was coming. He invites him to look into Kabak. John Guvan asks, "Is Jin Eon going to sleep today?" The main character does not answer. He is just silent, thinking about something. He remembers those runes. The guy was able to decipher them and realized that the word was written there. Maybe these were any verbal games? Grandpa notes that Jin Eon behaves somehow strange. Suddenly, a chunky man appears in front of his grandfather and Mizunjon. He asks them directly whether they are the freaks who have been beaten to the Muna so much. My grandfather did not even immediately understand who it was. This stranger does not answer, and immediately decides to attack. He makes a strong attempt by his fist. The abomination is strongly beaten by his grandfather, but he did not expect such a strong blow. He flew a few meters ago. This stranger came to repay the debt for his friend. Now he wants to deal with Jinjono. Fortunately, the guy reacted in time and blocked the blow with his hand, although it was severely painful. The young man stood on his feet, but drove a few meters ago. After a second, the enemies approach from above. They attack from above, getting ready to finish our hero. But Jin Eon jumps in time and evades the impact. The protagonist immediately suggested that these people were from the fortress of Peck. These 2 decided to do our hero, and the commander meanwhile will take on that master. John Guvan meanwhile sat on the ground, rubbing the nape. The blow was very strong and unexpected, but it is almost immediately raised. The man did not think that the conversation would start with his fists. After a second, the shaved man rushed to John again to continue their battle. He attempts, putting in this blow absolutely all his power. But now my grandfather is ready for battle. A gambling appears on his face, and after a moment their fists meet with each other. 2 mighty energies face together. The blow was strong, but only his grandfather repelled. The shaved man continued to stand on the spot. This abomination is disappointed. He never thought that Muna would be able to overcome some old people. These words do not affect my grandfather. His enemy is too alone. The man is charging energy and going to look at what this scum is capable of. After a second, the man attempts his hand, getting ready for a blow. John Guvan gets his fist right on his face, but right afterwards, the freak also beats him in the face. So to speak, they exchanged blows. But it was not the end. The shaved man hits him very much into his chest. The pain was incredibly severe, but it was impossible to relax because the fight continued. The grandfather took advantage of the moment and struck him in the jaw. But the old man just thought he had hit him, though in fact the man stopped his hand right in front of his face. And after that, the abomination grabbed him and threw it to the ground. The blow was so strong that the land under the man began to crack. John Guvan would have shouted with all his strength now, but I was well aware that it was dangerous. After that, the shaved man gets him in a strong blow directly into the face, pressing even more into the ground. The shaved man was disappointed that his rival was so weak. Suddenly his friend flew from this self-confident abomination. From such force, the man, along with his friend, flew directly into the wall. The protagonist, meanwhile, came to his grandfather to ask how he feels. In John, everything was good in Guan, because thanks to his mentor, he was used to frequent beating. The shaved man rose almost immediately, and was now ready to go to the battle with our hero. Jin Ion also did not wait, and immediately rushed to this freak, hitting him, but his blow was blocked. Although the abomination blocked the blow, his hand still hurts it. The young man thinks that this man is no different from those whom he just won. Then, the young man begins to apply many blows throughout the body. The failure does not have time to block them because they are too lightning and powerful. However, Jin Ion is not even going to stop. He applies his last blow, after which the enemy flies directly into the building that stood behind. Jin Ion looks into the place where the man arrives. Everything around was crushed, and the man had blood from his head. But he also did not intend to give up, and immediately flew to the guy again. After a second, there was a very strong explosion. As soon as the blow dispersed, their enemy disappeared somewhere. It seems that the abomination realized that he had no chance of winning, and therefore fled. But he fled not himself, but also took those guys. It is a pity that the freak took with him, because they could shake out the information. They were from the Pekma fortress. Obviously, these freaks were hunted by association. If, because of the situation, they have been angry with them, they should rush. It's been a while. Library staff placed and sorted books. Our hero and grandfather decided to visit this library. There were a lot of books here, and it is really worthy of the imperial estate. A library worker who filled in some documents sat at the table. Jinjon says that he came by the order of Lord because he needs to know a few things. The employee has already received a message about this guest this morning, and he is ready to listen to his questions. Jinjon was interested in the books that were taken away by his father. The man asks the guests to wait a little while he is going to book with other scientists. It took a while, and they brought only a third of all ancient scriptures. He said that as soon as the young man finished with it, they would bring him the books that remained. Yong Guvan realized that it would be very difficult to read it all here, but unfortunately they could do nothing about it. So it was necessary to start faster. It's been a few hours. Our characters continued to study these books. Suddenly, Cherutan and Jinjoni notice something strange in the book. The main character sighs heavily. He seems to have nothing. Grandpa asked if the guy did not find anything. The guy denied and said he had found something. There was nothing in the content of ancient books that his father could hide. On the contrary, he hid his message using the order of book names he often used. If the young man understood everything right, then the father, most likely, was waiting for the son to know it when he returned to the estate. Then, he remembers the poem in the camera of his father and hieroglyphics, which were there. One of them means the sky and the other earth. If you combine them, you can find another, that is your body. This means that Jin Hong studied the technique of absorption of the energy of the sky and the earth, the control of the soul, even at a higher level than his son. If the father decided to study the technique of absorption of the energy of heaven and earth, the control of the soul, then with his efforts he would accurately study it deeper than Jin Ion. But if the father still was able to study her and escaped from the estate, then why didn't return home to see the nanny at least once? In this case, Jin Hong would definitely not disappear throwing a nanny, so this option is eliminated. The emperor is probably not aware that Jin Ion is in the estate. It is amazing that they do not interfere, even if General Yuk gave him special rights, but they are still in vain before the ruler. But in such a fall, our hero does not understand why the emperor does not pay attention to him. After a while, they return to the camera in which his father was. Lord is amazed. Is the prisoner's room still left? What to look at? Hygen John has clarified something in the library, so he wants to assure this again to understand whether he was mistaken or not. Suddenly, the main character stops sharply, because he sees something strange and shocking. They seize that there is nothing left in the room. Everything was cleaned. It was urgent to apply about it to the military minister. After a while, they all gathered at the table to discuss it. The gray man immediately realized that this guy was the son of a scientist, who was so often told by General Yuk. He asks whether they have assumptions about who eradicated all the evidence in the camera. Most likely, it is the case of Van Hio's Hands, who is the head of the spy detachment. The spy detachment is a reconnaissance housing of the estate that stands with a gold guard. Their work is to prevent corruption. But in the prisoner room, their guard was investigating, so it is not within the competence of the spy detachment. Recently, there was a lot of strange in the behavior of the intelligence building. The man called them here because he has something to say to our hero, but before that, he wants to name the young man to a manager. If there is such a position in Jin, then no one will interfere with him. The emperor himself allowed it, so there should be no problems. Jin John became interesting how many minister heard something about him from General Yuk. He knows that our hero's father was prison, and the boy was sent to the island. In this case, the young man has a question. How can the emperor leave the guy unattended in the estate, and why is he in general a manager? It turns out that the emperor is now crown prince, and he is fully responsible for this situation. Then, Jinjona becomes interesting where the past emperor is. In fact, they are not aware of this, but if they are investigating their investigations, then it seems that he went to Jianggo. But the protagonist doubts that it is possible. But the minister assures him in another. No one knows how he was able to deceive the imperial family, and why no one has been able to find him, and whether he lived at all. There is information that one clan contacted the emperor, but this is not yet confirmed. The minister refers to the clan of Heavenly Blood. There is little known about them, but they were interested in gold plates and stone plates that the emperor tried to decipher. The emperor wanted to decipher these ancient scriptures, which, in fact, was engaged in Minjinhong. The Shadow Clan was also interested in it. That is why the clan from Jianggu has come closer to the government to solve the mystery of gold plates and stone plates. But there is another reason why he decided to give Zhenaion such a high position. He wants the guy to go to Jianggu and learn about the reconnaissance building, which is why he gave him this position. The minister asked him to monitor the reconnaissance corps. They received some information at the cost of 1 guards. They hide something exactly, sending the masters under the preposition to watch Jianggu. They are afraid that the secret will be revealed as if they were trying to bury it. The minister cannot leave everything as is. The chaos may start in the Control Dynasty. The minister also says this case is related to Mijinjon. They are afraid of what the main character's father was involved. After that, they are already going to go on their business. Before leaving, John Guvan asks whether they have seen anywhere with the minister, because he looks very familiar. The man was annoyed that the old man did not even recognize him. In fact, he thought he was pretending. John Guvan shocks when he realizes that they are really familiar. This Bovdor did not even recognize his relative. Now Grandpa understands where he heard this name. The minister asks everyone except the old man, because they are waiting for a personal conversation. Then, the protagonist bows and is about to go on business. They say goodbye, and Jinjon leaves his grandfather. After that, the doors are closed, leaving them together. Lord did not think that the familiar Jinjona would be a relative of the military minister. The protagonist could not think that his grandfather was so high. Before they left, the minister gave our hero some witnesses. It was a letter that one should pass to one person. The protagonist asks who he or she has to pass this letter. This letter had to get an old minister's old friend. They have not seen themselves for 20 years, but it is still alive and healthy. There are very few such intelligent people such as his friend. If Mijinjon finds him and passes a letter, he will receive help from him. His second name is Sonagovan, but people in Jianggo call him a hermit. The minister heard a year ago he lived on Mount Mudan and most likely was still there. Jinjon has already heard of hermit, but he is not sure that he will help him. The Guanhe will not have the choice except how to help a young man. The minister swears. Soon they went on the road. It was already deep night. In front of our hero was a long road, hidden by bright green trees and shrubs. Cheritan offered a guy to relax because tomorrow they are waiting for a very long way, but Jinyon confessed that he is very awkward. The main character remembers the day they left the imperial estate. The guy was approached by Hun San, who has been looking for our hero for a long time. The guy asks why he was looking for him. Hun San tells that he had passed because he had an important conversation with our hero. Hun San came to him secretly, so his sister knows nothing about it. Mijinjona gets wondering that this is the case if the guy came here in Thai. Hun San asks whether the young man has heard something about the clan of Heavenly Blood from Jianggu. The protagonist does not answer, but simply silent. After a second, the young man says he heard nothing about it. In this case, the guy decided to go immediately. His brother and sister, Hanju and Huju Ran, decided to secretly conclude an agreement with the Heavenly Blood clan. They are going to invest absurdly the amount of money in a ghost plan that Jianggo does not even know. If something goes wrong, it will not only have a great impact on the association, but also harm a photo of heavenly dragons. Hun-san, I do not know what the organization is, but if she is interested in these two, then this fact should not be ignored. Jinjon did not understand why the guy told him that. The young man just spread his hands and said that there was no special reason. He just thought that it would be nice to make friends with our hero. Jinjon could not stop thinking about what people from the association seek for. It seems that it is unknown that they are in their heads. Suddenly, a murderer from the fortress of Peckham appears in front of our hero. This man did not even think to hide his presence. The guy is wondering what he conceived. The shaved man strictly replies that he is not the one who needs to be hidden. This freak is about to defeat our hero and bring with him. The man has already violated the order simply to follow the guy. After the supervisor has been found, the result may be the only one, meeting face to face. In this case, there is no other way but to grab the main character. Jin Ion is not serious about this battle, because last time he almost won him. The shaved man says that now everything will be different and starts attacking. A moment, he rushed to the guy lightly. He quickly found himself right in front of Mijin Jonah's face, getting ready to strike. Immediately afterwards, there was a strong explosion. Of course, the young man evaded and was ready to strike. He hit the enemy, but he quickly blocked him with his hand. Do not delay the abomination. Uses the moment and beats the Hungjin into the stomach. From this blow, the young man flies a few meters back. But there was no time to rest, because the freak immediately rushes at him. The protagonist skillfully evades his blows, and so, he is made as if dancing. But the enemy is not going to seem. He conducts a series of blows on a guy. After a second, he grabs him by the collar and raises it above the ground. He did it in order to throw it into the tree immediately. From such force, the trunk breaks. Our hero lies on the ground and does not move. He didn't even try to resist. Suddenly, the enemy feels something strange inside. After a second, some dark chains begin to emerge directly from his body. They grab the trees and make the freak not to move. It turns out that it was a plan of Mijin Jonah. After that, the boy applies a strong attack, and the enemy is not even a chance to reflect. Jin Ion approaches him and says calmly that he wants to ask a few questions. But the freak says that this is not the end, because it will not seem so simple. Then Mijin Ion comes to his chest, complicating his breath. The protagonist is no longer going to regret this scum because he attacked him for the second time. Therefore, if possible, he asks this mummy to answer as honestly as possible. John Gouvan could not understand what had happened at dawn. The grandfather was a little tense. Did they really go to follow this guy? Jinjon said it was. The freak will carry them down to the fortress of Peck. Jinjon explained that they had talked very mentally, and the abomination was already changing their intentions and attitude. But the shaved man does not answer it, but only squeezes his teeth to hold back anger. Suddenly, he pays attention to something that is in the side. It seems that there was a clash. Grandpa says that after the death of these people took about an hour. Their bodies are too clean for those who fought. The shaved man looks carefully at their swords and concludes that they are most likely from the fortress. The man is not familiar with them personally, but made such a conclusion on their sword. It was a Hanyuan sword, the same sword as a symbol of Pupung. Judging by the blade, they were attacked unexpectedly, so they did not even have time to use swords. But if they are Penga warriors, they are strong people, and could not win them so easily when they did not strike. If you pass the mountain ranges, you can meet the successors of the liberation path. I must tell them about this to take care of the bodies of these people. Suddenly, the main character felt something very strange. He looked around sharply. He felt something very strange. From this, there was an anxious feeling inside the breast. Our hero told his comrades that someone was watching them. The shaved man thought it was a criminal who watched from afar, but Jinjon did not feel anger from him. Initially, the guy says they need to get out of here. Immediately after they went, a stranger dressed in everything black came to the clearing. The stranger seems to be looking for the one who killed the soldiers of the Puping, but was late. A man thinks that he has to develop a plan. He says voice inside and tell them Lord, and the stranger still decides to trace Joma. The man was very surprised that he just noticed him from such a long distance. The stranger begins to think that the main character could be involved in this case. Meanwhile, the man was angry because they were dared to ignore and killed Peng members. This news was told by Hazin Ion. He found a broken cart when he was traveling from north to south. He said that no one had left alive. The liberation paths called the Joni Jonah by a state official, but people who were in public clothing did not want to reveal their personalities, and the successors could not know more information. The man sadly said that they could not learn anything about the subject. At the moment, it is impossible to say what the likelihood that the people who told about it have found bodies. The man wants to go and personally check it. Only the 4th and 5th will go with it, while others will wait for their orders. The subordinate tells the head that there is no need to act in person. His brother and nephew were killed, and he also lost children and even an object. The map is a rose life, so it must act itself. Suddenly his uncle comes, for whom this guy was a son. Therefore, a gray man says he should leave. It is important not to forget that the head's of the duty to protect the family. It may be his last campaign before his death, so my grandfather is very asking to go there. The head allows it, but he asks to take people with him. Meanwhile, our heroes are still going on their business. This stranger continues to monitor them. He sits on the branch and watches them. Suddenly, he notices that one guy disappeared. Jin John just disappeared. Did the man inattentively follow him? After a second, our hero was behind the back of this stranger. He felt him again. The stranger was shocked by being found. At what point did the guy be behind his back? Jin Ion is not going to answer. He immediately grabs him by his throat, pushing from the branch. They fall from the branch directly behind the backs of John and this abomination. John Guvan looks scared to see what happened. As a stranger, he thought he was declassified. Jin Ion feels well the presence of a person. He asks why this stranger monitors them. The man is not going to lie and asks whether Jin Ion will do one thing. He tells that the one who killed the Pupung warriors whom they recently found is Joma, the third exorcist Hyolkiol. But the main character thought they had disappeared about 20 years ago. The stranger is aware that for some reason, Jin Ion is looking for a clan of heavenly blood. Exorcists Hyolil are humans of the clans of heavenly blood. 3 exorcists who were hidden suddenly appeared at the same time. The stranger monitors Yoma, and our hero pursues the heavenly blood clan. Therefore, the stranger asks again whether Jin Ion wants to accomplish one task. But before that, our hero wanted to know what the name is the stranger. This man seems to be and says his name is Prikon. Jin John says that he needs to look in one place. It doesn't take much time, so he asks to wait for him. Prikon was ready to wait for him as much as he wanted. Meanwhile, the evening was coming and my grandfather was gathering a soldier to go on this hike. The soldier tells that they found the person. 2 hours ago, he went with the commander of Param. Grandpa thought that it meant that they were going to the Pekma fortress. That is why they had to hurry. The night came. Our heroes went to the tavern to have a little snack and relax. Friends in Django call the Black Abyss. Jin Ion and Jong Guvan have never heard about it. The hint was a little awkward from this, and he somehow felt strangely after that. Is this the same Black Abyss of 8 stars? After a while, a grandfather with other soldiers enters the room. Our heroes immediately paid attention to the guests who have just come. They seemed to find those who were looking for. The main character recognized this man. It seems to be that Master Pen Han from the Pen family. It was amazing for the hint that the man decided to come here personally. Master Pen asked this stranger who he was, because he did not recognize him. The man introduced himself. His name is Prikon, a Black Abyss. Grandpa heard that the Masters of 8 stars are not inferior to people from large factions in their skills. The man explains that he came here because he has one thing. He is also interested in why the Master came here personally. The Master's master had a matter for this man, so he was looking for him. Grandpa was already known that our hero is called Jejun Eon. At first, he wants to express his thanks. Master Pen is grateful that the guy passed the news about his family, because it was thanks to him that they began the investigation. Now they go to business. These people came to find out some information. The grandfather asks if the guy saw the guilty of what happened, or saw at least any traces. The main character, unfortunately, saw nothing. They looked closely at the 3 of them, but they did not find anything. Grandpa heard the news that Jin Eon is a government official. It was a very unexpected question. Our hero asks that the Master Pen would like to know. The Master had a lot of questions. Why the official goes to the Peckham Fortress? What he has a connection with the Prikon? Whether he really told him the truth. The protagonist says it will be difficult to answer such questions. Suddenly, Master Pen gets his sword from the vagina. Jinjon is straining and asks what it means. The atmosphere in the room immediately changed. Master Pen says this is the best way to talk about an honest conversation. Jinjonu in a harsh tone warns that it will not end well. Prikon still does not know what the level of skill in Jinjona, but warns that this grandfather is a master of 10,000. But it was a chance to find out how strong the masters of Django. In this way, he will be able to check his forces. After a moment, the pen master rushes to the guy, attempting to sword. But the main character easily stops the sword with his fist. From such strength from the fist of our hero even went steam. But it was only the beginning. After a second, they continued to strike one by one, block them and evade them. Jin Ion behaved very carefully and concentrated, watching every movement of the enemy. The protagonist reflected and blocked all the strokes of the master with his bare hands. Master Pen was very surprised that the guy did it without any weapons. Therefore, my grandfather is not going to give up and uses all his strength for the next blow. This blow was incredibly strong. It seemed that he would now spread this tavern. But the main character skillfully evades the impact in the last second. After that, Master Pen again rushes to him with his sword. 2 powerful energies face each other. It is impossible to understand which one will win. My grandfather first sees that our hero fought so carefully. He once again assures that he has unsurpassed abilities. It becomes clear that the young man is a really incredible person, because he was able to resist the master. Cherutan warned the boy that he was careful, because through the sword of his enemy, the incredibly powerful flux of mana flows. One mistake and he's a corpse. The battle continues. After these words, the main character concentrates even more. Grandpa is not going to retreat at all, but on the contrary, only approaches our hero. After a moment, he draws another blow. Bright, as if lightning, the attack quickly runs to our hero. But Jin Ion stood against such a strong attack and was able to accept it. Grandpa says the young man to be prepared if he is going to continue the fight. The guy is full of energy. It radiates incredibly strong fiery energy. After a second, they rush to each other again. In their blood now plays excitement, feeling as if there will be an explosion now. The energy of fire and lightning energy collide with each other. And indeed, in a second there is a strong explosion. Everything is covered with dust. It seems that the room did not withstand such power and destroyed. Dust gradually settles. Jin Ion acknowledged that it was really the ability of the one who is closest to the masters of 10,000. Master Pen approached our hero and praised his strength. It was incredible. The grandfather was also surprised that the young man could stand, despite direct attacks. The old man asks what we'll have to do to hear from the young man answer their questions. If the master promised that no one will know about their conversation and he will not act on his own, then Jin Ion is ready to answer him. These were the minimum conditions. The story was not very pleasant, so the guy does not want everyone to know about her. There was a man on the top of the stairs. Below was our hero and his new friends. The subordinate told the head that they would deal with the guests, but the man forbade to do so. He told his subordinates to prepare and meet unexpected guests. Master Pen and head greeted. They have not seen themselves for a very long time. Their last meeting was when the man quarreled with Hongon Hu. The head will never forget the help in those days. It was the first and last time he asked for help from the master. Then, the man turns to our hero. He thinks he has some business to the guy. The head immediately realized that the young man from the Golden Guard, Jin Ion, would like to see the owner of the fortress because of the incident with the betrayal that happened in the estate. He knows that Mr. Fortress has a lot of connections with groups of dark warriors that are scattered around the world. Spear's detachment masters are now secretly acting. The guy had information that they were related to Django's warrior. Also, the protagonist would like to find out who they are meeting with and with whom. The man does not think they can help him with it. Why do they have to comply with requests that do not benefit them? Jin Ion reminds that they attacked them twice and tried to cause many association problems. The affairs of the association are not within their competence, so it proposes to postpone it. Our hero will try to forget the incident when he was attacked. The head is wondering what will happen if they give up this proposal. The guy would not want to push his hand to such people because their fortress has many relationships with criminals. But he has no other choice. The young man warns that if they cannot solve it with a dialogue, then he will be forced to use force. Master Pen, I warn the chapter that if the guy starts to fight, he will cause a lot of losses. Grandpa says it is better for them to accept this offer. If it even says the grandfather himself, then it seems like a Jonah's great skills in martial arts. The man thought a little and, after all, decided to accept his proposal. Jin Ion also asks to investigate the death of Zhongsan Han, a last advisor of the estate. He was killed 3 years ago on Beijing's main street. The head thinks that if it is a matter of murder in Beijing, then the Gold Guard should know more about it. In the investigation of the Golden Guard and the detachment of spies, it was recorded that he was killed after he was beaten by drunkards. But Xinjiang did not believe it. The protagonist thinks that someone specifically hid the truth. After their conversation, they went outside. After a while, they come to Nikango's messenger and welcome. He overcame the difficult way. Yoma and 3 more exorcists crossed the Tivon, and now they are approaching Mount Chikonamo. Prikon did not understand why exorcists and Yom were gathering in one place. This seems to be related to a person named after 10 swordsmen. Yuthon from the sect of 10 swordsmen was now in Chahunsan. The envoy also put on the side of the mountain about 5 or 7 soldiers who sat on their tail. Prikon says that they should also be sent to the mountain immediately. He orders to send a letter to the unit and find out what the situation is there. It seems that our heroes should rush. It became known that Jay's dream moves secretly. The shaved man does not understand at all what reason they decided to act secretly. The gray man explained that they pursue the exorcists of Hyolkiol. The man himself does not know that he is so far away. They may be chasing the exorcists of Hyol for the sake of justice, but they are not going to just look at it. Of course, they will wander around the world to catch up with exorcists. They gathered to manage the world situation, not to simply watch. The man's plan is that while they will chase the exorcists, they will chase after them. Exorcists Hyol have long been not the same as before. They have become much stronger and do not act independently. Someone stands behind them, but a man doubts whether there is a group that is able to cope with them. Then, the old man tells of a clan of heavenly blood. They are not yet widely known in the Django world, but they say they have a strong force. Thus, their plan is to follow our heroes and collect lost fruits. Does he mean that they will take away their glory when they get rid of the exorcists? If they benefit from the position of John Jay, then it will be even better. So they will be able to kill 2 rabbits with 1 shot. Everyone agrees to this plan. And to send for this task, he is going to those who want to protest. If you keep these people inside, they will definitely not be able to see their boundaries. It will be a great opportunity to test them in real combat. In addition, support follow them, so you will not have to worry about this situation. At first they decided to send 1 detachment for that. And in the meantime, they will go to Shan. Meanwhile, our heroes have already come to the foot of the mountain. But it was too late. There were many corpses of warriors. Pricon immediately guessed that it was the whole thing of Yoma's hands. Suddenly, the main character felt something very strange. After a second, Xinjiang caused the village and asked Phi to look for people in front of the mountains. Then he asks to find a cheese whether there is energy that the guy does not feel here. Unfortunately, Master Pen says that he was killed by the one who could spend them in the mountains. In this case, the protagonist says he will go forward and explore everything. Meanwhile, a real battle took place in the forest. This battle was incredibly cruel. They did not complain about anyone. Corrupted limbs were lying everywhere. Suddenly, a man went to a bright green ray of energy. This ray aimed directly in the face of a man who did not expect it. But he managed to repel this thing in time with his sword. So he sends this ray back. It turns out that it was a village attack, but it blocked it. Jinyan praises her and proposes to call this technique of Muoni. The man was shocked that someone could produce such a large amount of energy at such a long distance. But one could not be distracted because the Pricon took advantage of it and began to attack his enemy. Master Pen also participated in this struggle and began to attack their enemy, who was now discovered. There was a strong splash of lightning energy. Grandpa hit the enemy. The abomination was shocked, which used a lightning strike. Master Pen does not seem and continues to attack the freak, struck by lightning. But the enemy can withstand the attack, which is amazing a gray man. Of course, a man made a lot of effort for this, but still was able to resist. It seems not only rumors that the exorcists of Yahello were not the same as before. After a second, the red man rushed to the Master of Pen again to continue their persistent struggle. But his grandfather, of course, takes this attack and blocks it. They became so strong that they killed people John Jay's son, as well as their people from Peng. Now, the Master Pen is going to check how much this freak will have the courage to escape with the subject. It seems that his lightning attack gradually breaks the sword of his enemy. Seeing this again, Xinjiang was convinced of what a lot of energy with a master's master. If this person is close to the masters of 10,000, then the guy is scary to imagine how strong the truth is the masters of 10,000. They needed to deal with these people faster to go on. Inside the Elder, Yu resists most of the group Yoma himself, so he needs to help. The protagonist does not understand whether the aura belonged, who constantly attracted his attention, to these 2 men. Our hero says he will go first. Master Pen says that the young man is going there alone. The red man was already beaten and tired. Grandpa says to our hero to go, and promises that he will soon follow him. John Govan assures the guy that everything will be fine with his grandfather, so he calls him to go with him. Meanwhile, there was a battle between the rocks. The man happened against the enemies on his own. His movements were confident and strong. But the enemies were not afraid at all and continued to step. If it were before, even all present here would not be rivals for him. And now, it is difficult for grandparents to cope with even 5 rivals. Because of this, he believes that the name of the sect of 10 swordsmen is shaken. Suddenly, a man who radiates negative strong energy breaks before their battle. But fortunately, the man had time to block such a strong blow, although it was very difficult. This abomination threatens and says that today will take the head with him. Yoma still cannot catch a man himself. If he got a little stronger, this is not a reason to open his mouth. Grandpa repels his enemy a few meters ago. Even if he was destined to die today, he is about to take all these freaks with him. Y focuses and concentrates, trying to collect all its energy. And in a second, I use the technique by piercing the wedge. A bright lightning ray pierces the enemy. They had no chance, because now the grandfather uses the technique of heavenly blow. With this, a gray man was able to deal with several enemies. That John was very tired and breathed hard while the dust circled around. But it was not the end. The insidious enemy was waiting for him to weaken to run and strike. Fortunately, the master managed to dodge, and his fist did not fall into his face. But this freak struck him with the other hand. The grandfather flew back, and there he was already waiting for the enemies who surrounded on both sides. That John was well aware that things were bad. But suddenly, all the enemies pierced a bright green ray of energy. It was the village, the Fairy of the Wind. At first, the enemies thought it was just a wind, but then realized that it was far from. A strong wind rose, which almost knocked the abominations off his feet. The men were very confused, because they did not understand where it came from. The fairy was a little upset that her technique did not work on these freaks, but did not seem and decided to try again. Jinyon introduced himself to the master and said that he had been sent here by the commander of Pricon. The protagonist said his grandfather had a rest and left this enemy on them. They stood on opposite parts of this big puddle. Yom was greatly surprised that he could not completely dodge the impact. But fortunately, the internal damage was frivolous. But the enemy also noticed that the old master was already tired. It was impossible to distract, because the protagonist immediately rushed to the enemy. The abomination was very angry, because now all his plans were destroyed. Then, other enemies were connected to help their head, but his grandfather took them. John Govan struck his leg directly into his stomach. The abomination did not expect it. The old man was charged with power and energy. He is ready to have fun with this freak. The unhappy did not have time to block or at least evade strokes. The man did not even understand where these attacks came from. Sylphina noted that ordinary people who did not conclude a contract with her could not see her. When the fairy receives magical forces from the Lord, it is definitely not tired. It is necessary to knead the whole body well. Today she is about to try and use the magic of our hero. Sylphina unexpectedly decided to use a lot of internal energy, but it will be difficult for the guy to support his equipment. It was very surprised by the guy, because usually the fairy does not like to work and constantly complains. Still, the guys need to be glad that the enemy is so tired. He was injured in battle with a master. In this case, Jinjon is going to end with him until he has yet recovered. After a second, a real struggle begins. No place is in front of a full hit, but even when a man evades, he feels the power of a blow. It feels like you are not inside the blows. The man has never seen such attacks before. If he had enough internal forces, he would not suffer exactly. The abomination cannot stay here for a long time until it finishes with that. Of course, he is sorry for the dead brothers, but they can be collected again. The abomination should be reflected from our hero and escape from here. But it was very difficult, because it is difficult for him to even evade him. It was impossible to lose a minute, because as soon as the grandfather recovers, he would also come into battle. Therefore, it was necessary to quickly get rid of this guy. And for that he decided to use the ghostly technique of the Green River. After a moment, everything around became dark green. But for the main character, this was not a problem. He went through his technique, and immediately after that he struck a strong blow to his chest. The breath took away from such a blow, but Jin Ion just started. The young man collects all his energy in order to strike in his head in a second. And from such a blow, the freak flies directly into the rock that was behind. The guy acknowledges that his opponent is very strong. Suddenly, Jejinjan just falls on his knees as if having lost all his strength. The young man could not understand how his inner forces disappeared so sharply. But after a moment, he realized that it was all because of the fairy, which uses his internal energy. It seems that the girl was very fond of and forgot what the norm is. Cheritan told the guy to be careful, and just at this moment, the enemy began his attack. His dark energy wounded his shoulder. Yoma damage was too strong. In this condition, he will not be able to escape far and is accurately caught. But the abomination is not very concerned about it. He grabs a man by his neck. With all its strength, the freak presses Mizinjona to the ground, preventing breathing. The enemy confesses that he has never seen such abilities and techniques as a boy. The internal injuries of the guy look very serious, so if the enemy will pour his energy in him, then our hero's fault will burst and he will die. The man realizes that he loses, but is about to take with him at least someone. Hygen Ion is difficult to move even with his finger. There is no strength. Cherutan says the guy can still use the technique of absorption of the energy of heaven and earth, control of the soul. The protagonist is doubting, but now there is no other choice. Mizinjan is strongly grabbing the hand of this abomination, which is amazing him. Suddenly, the main character ceases to be with him. There is something very strange and creepy in the face of the abomination. After a second, Yom feels incredibly severe pain that covers his whole body. The man screams and begs him to let him go, but the guy is not going to do it. With every second, he sucks his vitality. After a few seconds, there is nothing left of this freak. His body was literally dried, and his life left. Jinjon did not want it to work out, but you won't do anything. There were no options. Suddenly, Sylphina feels that the magical forces of her owner ended. The fairies are very sorry because of this. Because if he lasted a little, she would have ended with this freak. Sylphine was a little upset because she did not know that the master's power would end so quickly. However, the village was able to have fun today. The freak, meanwhile, hopes that there will be no more attacks, and they really stop. The man does not understand that it just was and where these attacks came from. But after a moment he fell into the water, because he spent all his strength. Fatigue took the mountain. Meanwhile, our hero is still in the battle. The young man ruthlessly throws his enemy in different directions. From such strong blows, a mustachioed man coughs his own blood. He cannot resist. From the power of Mijinion throws it, dust rises. That John watches carefully at their battle, but still does not fully understand what happened at all. It seemed to him that Jinjon was just fighting, using internal forces, but suddenly his gaze changed, and energy began to move through. Is this young man turning the art of Yoma into a pure power and assimilating it to the fullest? He was able to use it in martial arts. The enemy of our hero absolutely cannot resist, because the guy is not on his teeth. Of course, the enemy tries to evade or reflect, but nothing works. Jin Aion seemed to have lost his consciousness. All he wants now is blood. After a second, it applies another attack. The main character wants to break the flesh of his enemy and break his cysts. Jinjon grabs for the heart of his enemy, feeling his warmth and heartbeat. Sharp and icy sensations settled deep in his head. And also, the guy felt incredibly strong at once, which he could realize later. Finally, the battle ended. Chirutan says that the boy's internal energy became very strong, but half of this energy was dark. In addition, Jin Eon suffered the soul of 2 people. Most of the energy was used to reveal the energy of the stone. This is absolutely unrelated to the will of Jinjona. However, Cheritan seems that half of the guy's strength has already been revealed. Our hero asked if there is no Sertan from him. Cheritan begins to be nervous from this question, but immediately denies everything. The protagonist gives him a strict look, which is full of suspicion. After a while, the elder came to the elder. Grandpa did not feel good. Master Pen apologizes and says they did not catch 2 enemies. That John is well with the Master Pen. They have not seen themselves for a very long time. The master did not think to see Chan again. If it weren't for his work, he would have drank for 3 days and 3 nights. That John still does not understand why the old man came personally. It was definitely not to see him. The master came here to catch those who killed his son and the people of their family. Grandpa learned that everyone who is involved in this is in this place. But our hero has already ended that freak, though it turned out to be accidental. Although he could not repay the enemy personally, he was pleased that he was able to find the right item. That chunk is not known for what purpose the penalty family needs ruby. But the master says that it is not just a ruby. Master Pen wants to say that it is a gemstone of fire. That Chan considers it strange, because there should be a pattern of fire inside the ruby. But it is not here. In this case, the John believes that it is not the stone. Master Pen thinks that they want to make their family their enemies. Now they have a very difficult situation. The life of one person depends on this stones. The only thing they stay for is to go to the HO family. If they stand here, the problem will not be solved. It is now important to focus on Halheil's exorcists. Prykon invites them to pass the exorcists they have seized them. Hygen John wants to get information from one person. If he needs to get information with interrogation, it is better to do it in their fortress. The journey to their fortress will take a long time. But if Hangen Jonas personally makes interrogation, it will be much faster. The hedgehog still allows Mizinjono to do so because it still caught him. But if the interrogation does not make any sense, they will take it to the fortress and trust the case of a professional. Then the main character decided to immediately move to the interrogation. But when they look at the prisoner, they see he is gone. He fled. The enemy runs away from that place and hopes that no one is catching it. Suddenly, another his friend, who was severely injured, approaches Manhwa. The red man tries to find out what happened and whether Joma was able to kill the Chan. Monchon sadly says that they had failed. They were prevented by a strange guy who unexpectedly appeared in the middle of the fight. Sanchiol, brother Yoma, all died. Only they remained of the surviving exorcists. It was very bad, because if they return like that, then the cult leader will not let them go. Suddenly, the breast of a red man pierces the sword. Someone attacked him from his back. The men did not understand where this stranger came from. They didn't even feel his presence. But it became clear that this man was not configured. Prykon did not expect to find the exorcists of Halheil, who fled in this state, although they were quite distorted. But judging by their clothes, these are the 2 they have missed. Now there is only one exorcist. It was necessary to understand whether he was alive or dead. John Gouvan said they would be forgotten about interrogation. Zhijon is convinced that the exorcist is still alive. Our hero makes this conclusion because his energy is still felt. Behind the back of the exorcists is a clan of heavenly blood. If this is true, then the exorcist who escaped must be urgently caught. It is necessary to catch it and interrogate it to find out information about the clan of heavenly blood. It was already night. The frightened exorcist was completely among the forest and seems to be scared. He could not find the freak who killed his comrades before. However, he was already behind his back. It was too late. The man was doomed. The enemy struck his sword directly into his shoulder. The blood flowed. The unfortunate tried to reflect and struck, from which the enemy bounced back. But for a stranger in the hood, this was not an obstacle. A few seconds, the enemy hid in the shade again. The man was severely wounded and evil because it is faced today with what he does not see with his eyes. A moment later, the enemy again finds himself right behind the back of a man who was already and so badly injured. The man immediately began to defend and reflect, but it did not help much. The man used all his energy to defeat the enemy, but he disappeared and skillfully evaded his attacks. The stranger continued to strike an unhappy man who was already doomed. Now he hit him with his sword. Unbearable pain has covered his whole body. However, the man does not give up to the last. He wants to fight for his life and will do it. Suddenly, a stranger grabs the unhappy hand. It was very easy to do because it was clumsy. After that, the enemy cuts off his hand without any regret. There was no chance of avoiding this. The man was crushed. Blood shed on his face, and he realized that there was no chance of salvation. Now this man was the only one who remained among the exorcists of Yahello. The stranger in the hood was about to deprive him of his life and suffering. But suddenly the man stood on one knee, leaning on his sword. The main character came just in time. He told a stranger that he's been doing this man now, so he should not interfere. Suddenly, our heroes surrounded this stranger. Prykon immediately realized that this man in the hood was not their man. He apologizes and says that they need to analyze the situation, so he asks this man to go with them. But the stranger is not going to obey them, and in a second he seems to dissolve in the air. Everyone immediately rushed to this strange stranger, but it was too late. There is nothing left of him. It became clear that he fled. The protagonist addressed the village and said that she would find this person who had just disappeared. Sylphina was very dissatisfied with the fact that Jin Ion gave her a job again, and she wanted to rest. But our hero reminds her that she has recently used all his energy, so he has no right to say something now. Let him fly looking for that man. After such words, Sylphin sighed hard and still flew to execute his order. She used her strength and very quickly found this stranger. But the fairy also warned the owner that there were many people around that stranger. It seems that a stranger was also comrades. Jin Ion asks the fair to spend him there. Our hero is about to chase the killer, and the masters asks to deal with everything here. The grandfather invites the young man to wait for them to go together. But Hygen Jonah is no longer stopped. Meanwhile, many people gathered in one place. Black capes and people in white clothes. The mustachioed man would like to hear a report on the situation of the immortal heavenly army. The Mins in black said they killed 2 exorcists, Hyoliol, and all people from the Chonchich fortress. 2 soldiers were killed in the process, and others were injured. With their grouping, no strange things happened. For the first arrival of immortal warriors, it was very good. A person in a black cape confessed that there was one problem. They could not kill 1 exorcist, and 5 witnesses appeared. He saw 2 of them for the first time, and 3 already knew, Prykon, Master Pen, and Thong. But fortunately, they did not reveal the personality of the killer. In this case, they were going to immediately turn back. Some did not like the idea to just leave here without even removing the witnesses, because it was dangerous. But do not need to worry because the witnesses did not reveal their true personality, so it is better to retreat, because their opponent is strong. More than 10 years have passed since they were closed. Why can't they play a little more? Now, with such forces, they have remained in the past. The killers insist on killing the people who remain, but the captain says he gives orders here. If they suddenly make a mistake, then everyone will suffer serious losses, so it is better not to risk it. It turns out that the main character heard their conversation. They said something about the Great Lord. These people seem to be true masters, and seem to not want to reveal their personalities. Grandpa is well aware that he, along with our hero, will not cope with such a crowd. The guy realizes that they are better off to retreat now. They should be glad to have some of the tips that received. Then they still decided to retreat for start. But just before you go, Chonggu Van comes on a dry branch that cracks under his feet. Because of this noise, they are noticed, and they have nothing left to fight. Jin Ion and John Guvan quickly rushed, but it seems that the enemies were still pursuing them. These strangers in the hoods were not even going to fall behind them. One of them almost touched his grandfather, but our hero pushed him away from the attack. The old man did not understand when and how enemies could attack them so quickly. The protagonist immediately begins to attack their enemy, using lightning technique. The stranger in the hood was unexpected that Jin Ion would attack him. These strangers will continue to pursue them, so you should run out of here. The body of our hero was very exhausted from battles, and there was almost no internal energy. And their enemies continued to pursue him, and therefore they are in a bad position. Strangers, like cockroaches, continue to sit on our heroes. Majin Jonah almost did not touch his sword, but he evaded in a timely manner. Jin Ion strikes the enemy, but he immediately disappears afterwards. The abilities of their enemies were very annoying. A moment later, the stranger in the hood was already in Jinjono. Fortunately, John Guvan covered the young man and saved from the blow. If not for him, the guy would be an end. After that, the enemy disappears again. The main character thanks the old man for his help. In any case, it was impossible to find the location of enemies. Their ability was really unique. The protagonist confessed that it actually knocks him from the panther. They had to admit that their opponents were really not simple, but they could do nothing, so they only had to fight off the enemies together. To the surprise of these strangers, our characters were very good and did not give up. Their struggle continued, and none of them was about to retreat. There were too many enemies and the forces were not equal. A strong explosion occurred in a moment. Fortunately, John Guvan and Jinjon were able to evade him and still stood on his feet. They didn't have time to play. They urgently had to kill witnesses. The cases were very bad because Jinjon could no longer tolerate. The energy was over. In such an environment, he had no choice but to risk the left forces. But Cheritan warned the guy that he would not be able to defeat these people with the help of the magical forces he had left. However, Certain was going to help the young man. He only needs to trust him. It has not been to think for a long time, and in a few seconds, Jijin Ion agrees to this adventure. Our hero asks Mr. Chan to run back and not look back when he gives a signal. John Guvan did not know that he conceived a young man, but he was about to listen to him. After a second, Jijin John screams loudly and orders John Guan to run away. Then, the protagonist uses the technique of continuous balls of hell. Suddenly something very strange appears in the sky. It was all the case of Hajin's hands. And then, from this unknown strange thing in the sky began to shoot balls. They attacked his enemies. Strangers tried to evade these lightning attacks, but it was very difficult for them. Human cries were heard. These attacks continued to fly directly to the enemies, but the protagonist said he had not finished it. Suddenly, something black, like a black hole, appears in the air. And then black spears appear from the ground, preparing to attack enemies. Even when the man saw it with his own eyes, he could not believe it. Did such a powerful force come from such a young boy? The captain gave the command to all subordinates, because they will definitely not be able to win. But one of the strangers is not sure that they need to run away, because they had to kill witnesses. This dark blue fire formed a wall and completely prevented them with a path. Even if they try to do something, it won't work. It was too late to do something. The captain shouts that if they immediately listen to his order, they would avoid these unnecessary problems. The captain orders the wounded to take away and retreat quickly. Finally, our heroes have escaped. Jinjon was incredibly difficult. They managed to escape. Enemies will definitely not pursue them here. Suddenly they heard some noise and thought that the enemies came to them even here. But fortunately, it was only a John. The meeting place changed, so he came here to hold them. John Guvan is surprised that they were able to find them in such a large forest. That John trusted the intuition that they could come here when he heard the sounds of explosions. The protagonist thinks something happened. It turns out that there was a tragedy. Subordinates of the Hint, who survived in the battle with the exorcists of Hyolkyol, were killed. Twilight was slowly falling on the street, and amid the soft evening light, a calm, even picturesque area was revealed, sharply contrasting with the tension of the events unfolding here, creating a feeling of an anxious pause before new discoveries. The hero approached the Master Han with a clear intention to learn the details of what had happened, carefully looking into his tired face and feeling that he would hear news capable of changing the further course of events. Lowering his head, Han spoke heavily, delivering the terrible news that all his subordinates who had been lucky to survive the recent battle were later mercilessly killed by unknown attackers. He silently pointed with his hand to the side where the covered bodies of the dead lay on the ground, and this gesture alone, without extra words, conveyed the scale of the tragedy and the depth of the loss. In Han's consciousness, a painful question immediately flared up about how someone dared to harm the warriors of the Konja fortress, and he firmly decided to find the guilty at any cost to make them answer for every drop of spilled blood. The hero silently listened to these words, recalling the warning in the story of the hooded man about the death of 2 members of the exorcists and all other fighters of Chonje, understanding that the chain of events was already beginning to form a single picture. After a short pause, he still dared to confess that he had overheard a conversation between the killer himself and his ally, deciding no longer to hide the information he had heard. The hero revealed this bitter truth that the person who killed Han's people was directly connected to those killers who carried out the bloody massacre of the exorcists. In Han's mind, an anxious question immediately arose whether the hero had at least some additional information about the identities of these villains capable of leading to their trail. Then the hero showed 2 fingers, emphasizing that there were exactly 2 attackers, and named their names as Yon Siran and Sangwan Tanchu. Han thought deeply, trying to recall whether he had ever heard these names before. sifting through familiar rumors and information about dangerous people. A moment later, he realized that Sangwon would probably be easier to track and find among the numerous organizations and combat groups. Pale interrupted the conversation, noting that if the talk was really about Tanchu, then it could be the head of a certain organization, since the surname Sangwon is not common enough to be easily traced without leaving traces. He added that, moreover, there are not many organizations that would have sufficient skills, resources, and courage to dare to attack the warriors from Konje. Despite realizing that the search might drag on, Han remained steadfastly determined to reach the guilty and hold them accountable, regardless of the difficulties of the future path. He sincerely thanked the hero for the valuable hint, and, addressing Master Ko, at the end expressed words of gratitude for the help in this difficult matter. At the same time, Han understood that in any case he had to return to the Konje fortress as soon as possible, so as not to waste precious time. His main goal was to interrogate the captured prisoner as soon as possible, hoping to get new leads from him. He pointed with his hand at the very same armless scoundrel who stood sullenly waiting for his fate. Recalling his previous words about returning to the fortress, Han promised to allow Master Ko to personally conduct the interrogation of this prisoner. It was for this that the hero expressed gratitude to Han, understanding that this created a chance to obtain the truth without delay. The old man anxiously asked if everything would be all right, noting that it might take some time, and suggested that perhaps it would be better to entrust the matter to professionals. Ko calmly assured them not to worry, as he also possessed some interrogation skills capable of ensuring the desired result. After that, he asked to be handed the prisoner, preparing to begin his own work. No sooner had Ko taken a few steps forward than his words sounded in a strange voice, saying that everything the victim would now see would be both an illusion and reality at the same time, and that he must unconditionally obey the order. Following the hero's action, the space around began to be filled with dense purple energy, which seemed to cut off the real world from the dimension created by the spell. The captive's eyes were covered with a spiral pattern, his body tensed convulsively as if he was about to break, and finally the first confessions came from his lips. At first he named his own name, and then in a mechanical voice said that he obeys orders and fully submits. Pale, stunned by what he saw, he asked distrustfully whether this was a mind control technique. The hero explained to him that it was not quite so, and the most accurate way to call what was seen was a special illusion technique capable of deeply influencing consciousness. But deep in his soul, the hero perfectly understood that in reality, this action was not just an illusion, but a complex magic created by combining two different techniques of influencing consciousness, thanks to which the effect appeared simultaneously surreal and almost physically tangible. After that, the hero continued the interrogation without delay, forcing the armless scoundrel to reveal everything he knew about the mysterious organization known as the Heavenly Blood Clan. The captive said that the joining of Hyolhyol to the Heavenly Blood Clan did not happen by their own will, but was the result of direct coercion by a mysterious third party. 10 years ago, after a devastating defeat by the Master of 10,000, they were hiding, healing severe wounds, and trying to restore combat formations, gradually recovering from the catastrophe. It was then that a stranger suddenly appeared before them, whose appearance was so unexpected that the entire camp was instantly enveloped in tense silence. On his face was a golden mask, the symbol of the leader of the Heavenly Blood Clan, which immediately made everyone wary and feel a hidden threat. Turning to them, he calmly asked if they were the same exorcists, Hyolhyol, carefully looking into their exhausted faces. The man stated that he had watched their battle, seen their helplessness before the Master of 10,000, and admitted that the defeat made a depressing impression on him and even caused pity. One of the exorcists was outraged by this and sharply asked how he, not knowing them personally, dared to say such things and whether he was not afraid to recklessly bring death upon himself. In response, cold and contemptuous words were heard that mongrels crawling at the very bottom look ridiculous when they dare to open their mouths. Such offensive audacity finally ignited the anger of one of the exorcists, and he already began to unleash his inner power, preparing to attack. However, the man in the mask raised his hands in a calming gesture and asked to wait a little, stopping the further escalation of the situation. After that, he stated that he had a special offer for them that could change their fate. The stranger said that he himself would kill the Master of 10,000, but in return would demand that all of them become his hands and feet and serve him for 10 years. This only made them laugh, as the offer seemed senseless and absurd, because submitting to some nameless man looked like a real delusion. Moreover, the title of Master of 10,000 could not be earned by just any vagabond, and they openly doubted the stranger's ability to fulfill such a promise. In the end, the exorcists refused and decided that this audacious man must pay with his life for trying to deceive them and mock their honor. The man in the mask took a few slow steps forward, coldly accusing them of not even being able to see the real benefit, and called it pathetic. Then he calmly added that they should not worry about their disbelief. Even if they are unable to comprehend anything with their limited minds, it does not change the actual state of affairs. He decided to prove everything not with words, but by demonstrating his own power, so that their doubts would dissipate on their own. Not even a few moments passed before the man in green was already kneeling, completely broken and powerless before the stranger. Only one word escaped his lips. Curse, because he could no longer speak further due to pain and fear. The power of the man who came to them turned out to be truly boundless and all-consuming. He no longer seemed human, but a real monster whose presence suppressed the very will to resist. Approaching closer to the exorcists, the stranger called them weak, and mockingly declared that with such skills they would not even be able to touch that swordsman. Thereafter, he strictly ordered them to act only as he commanded, allowing no objections. He promised to help them kill the Master of 10,000, and after that would allow their name to spread across the world, making them famous and formidable. Having finished his speech, the stranger directly asked them what their final decision would be. The choice was obvious, and they agreed to do everything he commanded, no longer having any doubts. After agreeing, the stranger threw them a small pill and ordered them to take it immediately, without explaining the details, but in such a tone that it was clear refusal or hesitation was not even considered. Later it turned out that this was a special pill capable of significantly enhancing inner strength and accelerating the development of exorcists' combat skills. He handed over the pill and added that until the Heavenly Blood Clan contacts them, they must return to their residence, recover their strength, and wait for further orders. The captive told the hero everything he knew, and at the end explained that this was exactly how they gained power, and, according to the letter from the Heavenly Blood Clan, went out to carry out the order by attacking Master Yu. He also emphasized that this person is extremely dangerous and stands far beyond ordinary fighters. According to him, the strength of this warrior is similar to the martial art of Ko, but differs in that it is enveloped by a terrifying, oppressive fear that is felt physically. This is a mastery that is impossible to forget because every manifestation leaves a deep mark in memory. When that man waved his hands, it seemed as if a demon was tearing out from his movements, materializing in the air. Before the eyes appeared the image of a blood-red devil emerging directly from the human body and carrying death with it. Having listened to this story and understanding that the matter with the exorcists had, in a sense, come to an end, the old man decided that now he, apparently, should set out to the Ho family. He also realized that the threat of the Heavenly Blood Clan could not be ignored, as the scale of danger goes far beyond a single battle. The old man would like to personally help with this matter, but admitted that the Peng family currently has much more urgent problems requiring his immediate attention. After these words, Bleedy asked him whether the obsession with the Stone of Fire was directly related to the serious illness of his granddaughter. The old man did not hide the truth and confirmed that it was so, noting that the girl had never been completely healthy since birth. A rare disease developed in her already weak body, due to which doctors predicted a short life for her, and numerous medicines not only did not improve her condition, but caused its constant deterioration every day. Placing his last hope on the stone, he turned to the Ho family for help. But this attempt turned out quite differently than he expected. That is why the old man decided to personally go to Ho to get answers and understand the true causes of the events. He understood that he could not just leave everything as it was and thoughtlessly return home, turning away from what had happened. After that, the old man addressed the host Ko, wishing to say a few words to him at the end of the meeting. He sincerely thanked him for the information provided, emphasizing that this knowledge could be a great help in further searches for the truth and understanding the whole picture. He also did not hide that he would be sincerely glad if fate would once again allow them to meet on the same path. At this, the conversation for the old man ended. Together with the others, they took the prisoner and headed to the exit, leaving the place of the recent interrogation behind. However, the hero addressed the host Yu, wishing to find out what exactly they now planned to do next. He replied that he intended to accompany them on the further journey, without immediately explaining the motives for his decision. The hard response surprised the hero, as he did not understand at all why he suddenly decided to join them right now and under what circumstances. When he tried to ask a question, the Pale One only limited himself to words about his own reasons, and friendly patted the hero on the shoulder, avoiding a direct answer. Later, the hero himself began to guess that the answer was hidden in the events of that fateful moment, which still did not leave his thoughts. Memories of what he experienced threw him into a slight tremor, which returned again and again, not allowing him to forget the feeling of that moment. The endless thirst for blood and killings, along with the memory of the power he felt then, remained deep inside and did not want to disappear without a trace. Anyone who felt such a sinister aura nearby would inevitably be interested in the Master of 10,000, so there was no longer any need to be surprised by this attraction. Now it became elementary clear to the hero that Ko accompanies them on the journey not just like that, but to see with his own eyes whether his power would harm this world, and whether he could restrain himself at a critical moment. He also realized that if something strange or dangerous suddenly happened, there would be no hesitation or doubts in Ko's actions. Weighing all this, the hero once again mentally asked himself whether it was really possible to allow this person to follow them further without hesitation. Having stepped back a few steps, the Pale One suddenly stopped, looked back, and suggested first to visit Chonju. He explained that they needed to meet with one person in the House of Winds before moving further along the chosen route. At the same time, another old man stood before two wall paintings, and behind him a man was kneeling, while the master himself inquisitively asked him questions in a cold tone. The old man summarized that 4 heavenly immortal warriors died, and 2 were seriously wounded during that clash. From the Chok Chok group, 1 fighter was killed, another seriously injured, and all 5 fell at the hands of 1 unknown man. However, the mustached man insisted that the attacker was not alone, and had an ally who also took part in the confrontation. The old man immediately asked how many people, in his opinion, should have attacked the place where 8 heavenly immortal warriors and 5 from the Chok Chok group were located. He emphasized that 3 were killed in this clash, and 2 only wounded, which seems very strange for a mass attack. From a logical point of view, under such conditions, the attack should have been carried out by at least a dozen well-trained fighters. The mustached man thought deeply and considered only 2 possible options: 10 warriors or 1 master of 10,000. In response to the master, he could only say that he would never allow such a development of events under any circumstances. The master sharply replied that if he were more responsible, there would have been no casualties at all, and the boy would not have been able to escape the battlefield. To be sure, he asked again if the mustached man even understood what he was being told now. He tried to say something, having a few words of excuse ready, but the master did not even let him finish, loudly shouting that the boy escaped from a place only the master of 10,000 can break free from. He blamed their arrogant, senseless pride for everything, which led to catastrophic consequences. After that, the master decided to directly ask if he had any justification for his failures. The mustached man could no longer deny anything and only replied dully that he had nothing to say in his own defense. It was clear that the master considered it unacceptable to let this man wander freely in the world, as no information should be allowed to leak out. Therefore, this time he ordered himself to enter the fight and personally kill the one who caused this whole situation. He sternly added that no reinforcements would be allocated and not to even hope for help. The mustached man perfectly understood that if he could not carry out this order and kill the target, he would die himself. It was impossible to escape from the master, and he had no choice but to obey the order. He folded his hands before the master and firmly promised that he would definitely kill his target at any cost. Meanwhile, the hero, together with the Pale One, had already arrived at the destination. They stood right on the steps of the House of Winds, fully ready to go inside and meet the one waiting for them. The Pale One suggested going in, and the hero, without hesitation, briefly replied that he agreed. And suddenly, right on the stairs, they were met with an unexpected surprise that instantly shattered the calm, as the situation sharply shifted from tense anticipation to direct confrontation. Out of nowhere, a girl with a bare sword jumped out and, making a swift, sharp swing, aimed directly at the hero, leaving no second for explanations or evasion. At the moment of the strike, a powerful gust of wind rose, so strong that it was difficult to understand its origin, as if the very element itself suddenly intervened in the events. The hero heard accusations directed at him that a terrible aura and demonic energy emanated from him, which scared everything around and instilled anxiety. She stopped him with the words that a creature with such a presence had no right to cross the threshold of this place and enter inside the building. Because of this, the girl swung her sword sharply again, continuing to advance without any hesitation. She ordered him not to even think about taking a single step forward, supporting her words with the force of her strikes. Although she could have simply warned him, for some reason she attacked again and again, forcing the hero to constantly defend himself without the opportunity to respond calmly. Looking closely, he noticed that her sword was also wrapped in dark energy, and involuntarily the thought arose whether she possessed the technique of wind control. At the same time, her attacks could by no means be called weak. Each strike carried a tangible threat and the power of the element. The hero tried several times to outshout this furious onslaught and explain that an unfortunate misunderstanding had obviously arisen here, and that they had no intention of harming her or the House of Winds in any way. He pointed toward this master of 10,000 and said that they had arrived on the recommendation of that man to meet the right person, not to engage in a senseless fight. However, she categorically refused to believe the words of the person from whom such a dark and threatening force is felt. Realizing that the situation could not be resolved with words, the hero understood that he simply had no other choice left. He could only try to calm the girl, relying not on explanations but on his own actions.